Please wrap up their conversations. If I would ask that you stand for those of you in the other room, we've moved the flag in here, but the flag will be projected. If you would please rise, and if you would like, with your masks on, please help me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. My name is John Arnold. There's usually 4 pieces that are required for a town meeting here in the Massachusetts and Westboro's form of government. I am the moderator, one of those 4 pieces. I'm John Arnold, 251 West Main Street, your elected moderator. Another critical aspect is the town clerk. We have Wendy Mickle, your elected town clerk, to my right, your left. Because of our bylaws, this annual town meeting has no quorum, so that 3rd piece has been met because we have more than 0 voters here. And I have a warrant issued by the selectmen that was properly posted and has been properly advertised. So we are all set to go. I hereby declare the May 15th, 2021 Westboro Annual Town Meeting in session. A couple of things right off the bat that people are thinking about. I'll address the first one first. Due to the luck of the draw, regardless of the CDC guidelines, I've conferred with the Board of Health, and as you may have read in the news, Governor Baker is not going to change the state's orders about masking until early in the week. So we are asking everyone to please keep their masks on and to preserve social distancing. With that said, I think we all feel better than we did last June at this time, and I think all of us hope that things are back to closer to normal town meetings for our next one. I also want to mention, for any of you on your phones, there is a Wi-Fi hotspot provided by the school. The ID is WPS for Westboro Public School Town Meeting. That is Wi-Fi if you want to access. Hopefully, don't download too much video or anything to eat up the bandwidth, but if you want to access any town documents, you can do that. To my right, your left, we have the Board of Selectmen and the town staff representing the executive branch of government, and there will be other town staff that are in the other smaller gym that will be in and out, not taking up valuable seating space here. We have the Advisory Finance Committee appointed by me, and that acts as sort of a forebear of the legislative branch, which we represent. They are here to my left. The school committee traditionally sits over here, and the planning board traditionally sits over to my right, your left. And I want to mention that you should either have or be sharing a copy of the Advisory Finance Committee's report and recommendations. It has the warrant as it was issued by the selectmen, along with any notes made by the Finance Committee and the recommendations of the Advisory Finance Committee, and they have also included the recommendations of the selectmen in their booklet. I would like to thank Steve Masciarelli, Mark Stockman, Steve Ashley, the Westboro TV folks, all the school staff, and everyone involved in setting this up. It still remains much more unusual and difficult than a usual town meeting, and everyone was very helpful in pulling this all together. Thank you to everyone involved. We're finally back to the point that the Women's Club has been allowed to have a table with some coffee and snacks, and so you probably walked by that on the way in, so feel free to in and out. There are also restrooms that are being cleaned right outside the main gyms between all the rooms we're in. Before we get any further, it's you, the meeting, that formally elects deputy moderators in case we have it. So I'm going to tell you right now, the main rooms that we are going to be counting votes in are the large gym and the auditorium. We have the smaller gym set up for overflow, but so far we haven't needed it. And just to make things run more smoothly with fewer rooms to have to look for voters to address the meeting and to count, I'm going to ask all the voters who, if they are comfortable, to please sit in one of those 2 rooms, but if we need to open the 3rd gym, we will. Just in case we do have to open the 3rd room, I'm nominating Lisa Blazejewski of 2 Treetop Park and Benjamin Gold of 19 Blake Street for the post of deputy moderator, so they can staff those 2 rooms if necessary, or so we can swap out if, heaven forbid, one of us has to go to the bathroom or something like that. They've been briefed and prepared to serve. So we'll start off by, for those of you who are new or who don't remember, we don't raise our hands, we raise our voting slips. They're nice and brightly colored, and it proves that you're a voter who's been admitted to the meeting. So I have nominated Lisa Blazejewski and Benjamin Gold to serve as deputy moderator. Will all those in favor please raise their voting slip? Okay, down. All those opposed? I see no opposition in the main gymnasium. Ben or Lisa, is there any opposition in the auditorium?
No opposition.
No opposition. In that case, I declare the vote has been in favor of Lisa Blazejewski and Benjamin Gold to serve as deputy moderator. So Ms. Blazejewski and Mr. Gold are your deputy moderators. Ms. Blazejewski and Mr. Gold, will you please rise? I know I can't see you, but do you solemnly swear that having been elected deputy moderators, that you will faithfully and impartially perform the duties of this office, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your willingness to serve, and you may be seated. I have not been informed of any non-voters who wish to speak before the meeting. Non-voters are only allowed to speak if they are approved by the meeting, not by me. I have not heard of any, so we'll skip that. If during the course of the meeting there's a non-voter who wishes to speak, please bring it to my attention. I will note, however, that our town bylaw assumes that any town employee may speak at the request of their department, so any town employees will be allowed to speak when necessary. So let's see. I do want to take some time out to thank everyone. You know, there's a lot of differences this year from 2 years ago. It's very similar to last June's meeting, although it's not as hot, thankfully. And of course, if we've moved this one from June up to May, hopefully next year we'll be back to March. So I'm going to, as with previous years, because of the social distancing and everything, I'm going to skip over some of the traditional procedural explanations and just let you know that if at any point you have a procedural question, you can call out point of order. And I'll also mention that for those of you who are new to town meeting or just want to recap, the inside page has town meeting at a glance, which summarizes our rules. There's no roving microphones. I'm going to ask people who can and are able, when they're recognized, or to either get in line or by one of the voters' microphones. There's 2 voters' microphones here in the main gym, and there's 1 voter microphone on the floor of the auditorium. And I will try to balance between rooms as there's people to talk. If you cannot, if you have disabilities or things that prevent you from moving to a microphone, please raise your voting slip when I ask if there's anyone who wants to ask questions or make a point about the meeting, and I will come over and I will have you tell me your question and I will repeat it for you so you can stay seated. Again, I'm going to ask you to stay separated, keep your masks on. And I also want to remind you that discussion and deliberation is limited only to the topic and motion at hand. If you have comments about some other aspect of town that aren't relevant to the topic or the motion, there are other forums for that. And since we're here acting as today as the town legislature, our deliberations are by design focused on the actions and motions before us. And so it may not be that it means that you don't have a valid point. It may just be that it's not relevant for the town meeting, and I may ask you to send your remarks somewhere else. If we do have to take a count, the moderator and town clerk, or deputy moderator and assistant town clerk, will do the counting, and we will announce the count, and we'll explain that if and when we get to the point. And again, if anybody has a question about procedures, feel free to call out point of order at any time, and I will address the question. Let's see. Try to skip over this. I'll make one point. I don't want to go through the whole thing. If this is your first or second town meeting, welcome. I usually take a time out. And whether this is your 30th, 40th, 50th, 60th, or whatever, thank you for still being here. We welcome any and all participation in town meeting. Our open town meeting allows any voter to act as their own citizen legislator, and I'm thankful for all of you who take time out of a glorious May day to be here. With that said, I want to point out that each of the rooms has well-marked fire exits. If a fire or evacuation alarm rings, please calmly start thinking about where the emergency exits are. There's one behind the screen to my left. There are some over here. There are some in the back. And likewise, they are marked in the auditorium. Of course, we have plenty of fire and police in the building, and it could be best for us to just behave accordingly and try to just wait to, not necessarily wait to see if they say it's a real emergency, but let's just pay attention to what they say and start gathering our things and do that. If you have a phone, please put it on silent. And I know of no other procedural issues. So, typically, at an annual town meeting, this is the first one in the many, many years I've been coming to town meeting, typically Article 1 is the election. but because of COVID, the election was done under a separate warrant. But I did want to take time out as the town's legislature for us to acknowledge the elections that were held in March. And I want to mention that this year, there were many who were ready to serve and only some were elected. But I would like to ask that we all thank those who took to the fore and actually were ready to serve. And I'd like to ask anyone who either was elected or ran for office to please stand so the legislature can acknowledge you and thank you on their behalf. On behalf of the town meeting, Westboro's legislature, I'd like to thank you for your commitment to the townspeople of Westboro. We now move to Article 1. Mr. Beretti. Yeah, let's find out.
Good morning, Mike Beretti, 54 Adams Street. I move that the town vote to receive the reports of the various officers and committees, and that the report of the Advisory Finance Committee be acted upon item by item under the various articles of the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Beretti. You go. I think you should adjust that microphone now. Any discussion? I see no discussion here in the main gymnasium. Is there anyone want discussion in the auditorium?
No, sir.
All right. We'll move to a vote. So all those in favor of Mr. Beretti's motion to receive the reports of the various officers and committees, please raise their voting slip. Okay. Any opposed? I see no opposition here in the gymnasium. Any opposition in the auditorium?
No opposition.
No opposition. I will declare that a unanimous vote. At this point, I want to bring your attention to the primary reports that we're accepting are those in the town report, now available on the website in PDF form, as well as a hard copy if you picked it up this morning. And I would like to take this opportunity, as we typically do, to acknowledge, first of all, I would like to thank all the healthcare workers, the first responders, and everyone who's played a part in keeping us safe and keeping us moving forward during a very difficult time. So I do want to mention that that's mentioned in the reports many times. So why don't we take a moment to just thank people. And I know there's lots of different people in lots of different roles, so everyone who's played a part, consider yourself thanked on behalf of the legislature. And now the more solemn part of my duty is to remind people that the town of Westboro dedicates its annual report, and we at the town meeting take time out to acknowledge the 39 residents of Westboro who passed away in 2020 due to complications from COVID. And we also want to acknowledge the residents we know of who passed away in 2020 who dedicated their time over the years to serving the town of Westboro. Those that have been noted are Erleman Dottie Ryman, Edward Uhlman Jr., Virginia Irwin, Noah Grains, Al Mosier, Thomas McCabe, and William McLaughlin. So can we just take a brief moment of silence and remember these people and thank them for their service to the town and to honor those who died from COVID in the past year. Thank you. And thank you to Wendy Mickle, the town clerk, and everyone who's involved in pulling that list together. At this point, it's our tradition for the Finance Committee Chair to give a summary of the message to voters in the Advisory Finance Committee report and recommendation. So we'll do that, and then we will also follow our tradition, and on behalf of the Selectmen, the Town Manager will deliver a brief state of the town, and then we move in to the rest of the articles. So Mr. Beretti.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So to say we've passed through a difficult fiscal year is, of course, an obvious understatement. Fiscal year 21, a year that was marked by painful budget cuts, a significant reduction in local receipts and fees, and most disturbingly, uncertainty. But as the year comes to a close, we are pleased to say that things are looking brighter financially, and you will hear the underlying details of that in the upcoming town manager's report. First, the AFC would like to acknowledge the extraordinary effort of our elected officials, the town manager and her team, especially the finance director, department heads, the school committee and superintendent, and town employees. Their work and the supporting fiscal management policies that have been implemented over the past few years have put us in a good position as we enter fiscal year 22. And so we are pleased to report to you that Westboro remains financially healthy. Each proposed budget line item and article that we will be addressing today appears reasonable, well justified, and linked to the town's strategic plan and the ongoing master planning process. However, and there always is a however or a but, as the AFC looks forward, we're prompted to consider the cost of a growing and changing Westboro and the spending decisions we as a community are going to have to make. We continue to have a desirable and vibrant community, but the wish list is long and improvements come at a cost to everyone. It's very much worth remembering that while there is wealth in our town, there is also financial stress on many family budgets. One need only to see the signs for today's food pantry drive to confirm that. When we come together like this in a town meeting, you are the legislature. And to you passes the decision making to spend our money. How we spend it, when we spend it, and from where that money will come. We've been operating in a COVID-induced budget, but we do expect that future requests are going to be a restoration of some of the cuts that were made this year. As we have said in past reports, if managing the tax bill is a priority for you, then the AFC recommends the focus be on managing the expectations and pace of projects, services, and facilities, especially those that will result in sharp increases in year-over-year spending. We also recommend that the cost projection and tax bill impact for any specific building project or significant expansion of the operating budget be identified early and emphasized as part of the decision-making process. In that vein, to help you understand the impact of spending decisions on the tax levy, I'd like to call your attention to the municipal finance basics that are on page 7 of our report. So to conclude, things are looking up, but let's not let our guard down. Thank you. Mr. Moderator.
Who said that? Who said Mr. Honorary? Mike did. Oh, Mike did. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Sounded like it came from a different microphone. All right. Are you all set, Mr. Brody?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Williams. Now, as our tradition, as part of the receiving of the reports, we hear a state of the town. On behalf of the selectmen, Christy Williams, Town Manager.
Good morning. My name is Christy Williams, and I'm your town manager. Thank you for joining us here this morning. Now the clicker's on. So. This year, our fiscal 22 budget document was also done using the GFOA, or Government Financial Officers Association, best practices. We started this for our FY21 budget, and it was really an effort to provide the community with a document that gave some narrative behind all of these numbers. So I encourage you to look at the document. It really shows all the work of our department heads, their accomplishments, and short and long-term goals, as well as the budget numbers. This year, we also included the debt maturity schedule, as well as the road management plan, and that can be found on the town's website under the town manager budget documents. We are very proud to share with the town that we did receive the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. This was an award granted to us for our first year budget that we followed these GFOA practices. For our FY21 budget, we received the award, and we'll also be submitting our budget, FY22 budget for the award. And looking at the fiscal year 2021, as we close out this fiscal year, which will end on June 30th, we just wanted to give you an update. As you all know, the state passed the budget in December of 2020, which was 6 months after the town passed our FY21 budget, and also a month after we set the tax rate, which is not typical. Typically, we have the state's budget numbers before we do that work. And we're happy to report that state aid came in close to our projected estimates. As we've discussed, we've made a lot of changes to the FY21 budget. Due to the pandemic, we reduced our local receipts by about 19.5%. And so now that we've gone through the third quarter of FY21, we're happy to report that our overall local receipts are estimated to meet the targets. We did have some that came in lower than estimated: hotel, motel, investment income, administrative fees, ambulance receipts. And then in the third quarter, some came in higher, including meals tax and licenses and permits. Looking forward to FY22, we did continue some of the budget cuts, though we also included some budget restoration. So some of the things that you won't see in the FY22 budget include hazardous waste day, OPEB funding, Department of Public Works, some of the seasonal positions, training and travel, and overtime. So those continue to be left out of the budget, though we expect over time we'll be restoring these items. This slide shows the FY22 budget comparison. So the total increase in our budget in FY22 over 21 is 4.8%. You'll see at the bottom there, which is about $5.5 million. Some of the impacts that speak to those numbers are here. So we've done some COVID budget restoration, as I mentioned. That was the Economic Development Director position, a DPW labor position, and also the Council on Aging outreach worker positions were all fully funded in our FY20 budget and only partially funded or funded in a different way in our FY21 budget. And so looking to FY22, we fully funded them. So economic development and DPW labor, for example, were funded for 12 months in FY20, 6 months in FY21, and are funded again 12 months in FY22. As many of you know, we have a police department staffing plan. We were planning to add 3 new police positions in FY21. We added 1, and not for the full year. And so we're seeing that increase to fully fund that 1 position that was added in November of 2020. And then the Council on Aging outreach workers, we had offset the cost with gift funds in FY21, but that was always intended to be a one-time revenue source for those positions. And so those are fully funded in the 22 budget. And then another change that we made, which is not due to COVID, was the golf course management. We previously managed the golf course through a contracted position, and we've moved that into an employee position under the Recreation Department. So we're asking the town to raise on the taxes $153,178. In addition to the money in the enterprise fund. However, we do expect to have some revenues that we had not recognized previously that were recognized by the contractor who was previously in the position. We're funding some FY22 strategic plan priorities. So I already spoke to the police department, that increase. The fire department staffing, we added 8 additional firefighters as part of our initiative to proactive public safety. We obtained a grant in 2018 that is coming off in FY22. And so the town's financial responsibility has gone from 48% of the cost of those 8 additional firefighters to 88% in FY22, which is that $234,000 increase. We also continue to promote education and professional development. So in our regularly recurring articles, you'll see the tuition article. And then we did make some changes as a result of receiving our non-public safety staffing plan to create a community development director and HR coordinator by reworking some existing positions, and there's an increased cost there. And then we continue to support the construction of the new library and expect that the grant will be received in FY23. There are 2 raise and appropriate articles in addition to the budget article. So the tuition reimbursement, as I mentioned, is estimated to be about $2 to the average single family. And then the treatment of Lake Chauncey, Article 5, is also anticipated to be about $2 to the average single family. You'll also see some differences in budget organization. So the information technology budget now includes the communication budget. So you used to see that separately, but when you see it in Article 2, you'll see that they're both in information technology. This is a budget that the IT director already oversaw and just makes sense to combine. We also created a finance department a couple years ago, and so we've fully put together accounting, treasurer collector, and assessing into one budget, so you'll see that in your books. And then the Department of Public Works, as a result of the staffing study, I had delegated the facilities department or buildings and grounds supervision to the DPW director. Article 22 will ask to do that formally within the charter, but you'll see those two budgets combined also in the budget article. State aid is something that we've been talking about since January as we've been watching the state budget play out. We're estimating our overall increase in state aid of 29.3%, which is significant, and that just reduces the amount of money that needs to be raised on the taxes. Two of the things that we attribute to that is the implementation of the free full-day kindergarten in FY21. We heard from the school department when they talked about that we would see money come in through Chapter 70 to offset some of that, and then also the partial funding in the Student Opportunity Act. And then this slide just shows that typically our increases are much lower. And then this year we're seeing almost a 30% increase. So in January, when we were looking at the budgets and we were estimating more of a level funded state budget, we were estimating an increase of $610 to the average single family. Understanding the significance of that number, we were recommending that we continue to use free cash to lower the tax rate. So we were going to continue to use the $770,000. Today, because of money that we were anticipated to receive through the state budget and also through the American Rescue Plan, we're estimating a $332 increase to the average single family if everything were to pass today. And this is just a slide that shows the history of our increases. This slide shows us compared to our data dashboard communities for the average single-family tax bill of $10,003 in fiscal 21. This slide shows our excess levy capacity. So with the budget that's before you today, if approved, we would grow our excess levy capacity by about $860,000 estimated for fiscal 22. And then this is us, excess levy capacity compared to other communities in the data dashboard set. As Mr. Beretti said, that Westboro continues to be very financially strong and strong in our reserves. And you'll see at the bottom here that if everything were approved today, our free cash and stabilization would be at about 13.08%, which is, excuse me, well within the target set forth in the comprehensive fiscal management policies of 10 to 15%. This just shows our town reserves over time at the end of fiscal 20, which is when everything was last certified. And so before we expend any of that money, we were at almost 15% combined free cash and stabilization. And then here's a comparison to our data dashboard communities with free cash. So you see that Westboro is the green line. This slide shows how your tax dollar will be spent. So we're estimating a single-family tax bill of $10,335.13. And this slide here shows what each sort of grouping of services that you receive, how your tax bill funds those specific services. So this is the town of Westboro vision. Westboro, a vibrant, inclusive, safe, attractive, connected, and engaged community for a lifetime. I think you'll see today when you hear from our department heads that all of our employees and many elected and appointed officials have been working very hard for you to recognize that vision throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. So that concludes our receiving of the reports. Many of the statements Mr. Beretti made and that Ms. Williams made as they relate to the coming articles. If we don't typically address questions about the presentations now because they're just setting the stage for the work before us, which is Articles 2 through 29. So at this point, we move ahead to Article 2. Mr. Beretti.
Mike Beretti, 54 Adams Street. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate such sums of money as may be necessary to defray the expenses of the several town departments for the ensuing fiscal year, and that each total read by the moderator be considered a separate motion made for each of the line items making up that total in the column marked Fiscal Year 2022 AFC Recommended Budget. I further move that the sum of $1,128,424 be appropriated from the Capital Improvement Fund toward the costs of the fiscal year 2022 debt. And I further move that the following sums be appropriated to operate the country club enterprise: $500,000 from the enterprise revenues, $153,178 from the tax levy, for a total FY 2022 country club budget of $653,178.
Thank you, Mr. Beretti. Just a refresher, either for those of you who are new or because it's been almost a year since we've done it. Typically what we do now is that on behalf of Mr. Beretti's motion, I will read the various salaries and wages and expenses for each department. If you want to discuss or have questions or make comments about any of those line items that I read, simply call out question, and I will make mark of the questioned items. When I have read the entire list, we will first take action on all the unquestioned items, and then we will return to the questioned items and deal with them one at a time. Over the years, we've found this an efficient way for us to address the budget and also to address the questions and comments of the voters. If that's confusing, or if at any point you're confused, just call out point of order. But in the meantime, if you just want to call out a particular line item that I read for further debate, just yell question, and I will acknowledge that I heard your remarks. Likewise, in the auditorium, Mr. Gold or Ms. Blazejewski, if you hear somebody call out a question, please let me know so I can add that to the list. Here we go. Town moderator, salaries and wages, $250. Board of Selectmen, town manager, salaries and wages elected, $2,500. Salaries and wages, $524,184. Question on Board of Selectmen, town manager, salaries and wages. Board of Selectmen, town manager, expenses, $59,050. Finance Committee, salary and wages, $4,087. Finance Committee expenses, $1,300. Finance Departments, accounting, treasurer, collector, assessors, salary and wages, $703,063. Finance Department expenses, $67,866. Legal expenses, $132,500. Information technology and communications, salary and wages, $231,952. Expenses, $424,530. On that page, the only thing I heard questioned was Board of Selectmen, town manager expenses. Everything else went unquestioned. Salary and wages, thank you. Shouldn't write and talk at the same time. Okay, so the questioned item was Board of Selectmen town manager salary and wages of $524,184. We'll come back to that. Next page. Let's see. Central purchasing expenses $85,140. Town clerk salary and wages elected $107,428. Town clerk salaries and wages, $142,752. Expenses, $7,100. Election and registration, salaries and wages elected, $2,000. Salaries and wages, $5,600. Expenses, $29,500. Conservation Commission, salary and wages, $136,961. Expenses, $13,325. Planning Department, salaries and wages, $165,653. Expenses, $5,550. Board of Appeals, salaries and wages, $4,590. On that page, I heard no questions. Board of Appeals expenses, $2,376. Economic Development, salaries and wages, $68,542. Expenses, $7,550. Insurance, expenses, $13,469,350. Police Department, salaries and wages, $3,856,347. Expenses, $243,085. Fire Department ambulance, salaries and wages, $5,106,222. Expenses, $420,200. Building Commissioner, salaries and wages, $443,703. Expenses, $11,900. Weights and measures, expenses, $2,650. On that page, I heard nothing questioned. Yes?
We're on the column with the economic development salary and wages.
Yep.
Is that really supposed to be 0% increase? It looks like it's going from 36 to 68,000.
Looks like a typo. Would you like to question it so we can address that, or? You like to question that? Okay. Just so that, okay, so there's been a question on economic development, salaries and wages. We'll come back to that. All right, so on that page, I have one question on economic development, salaries and wages. Next page. Animal control, salaries and wages, $60,362. Expenses, $5,916. Assabet Regional Vocational School, expenses, $805,484. Department of Public Works, that now includes the town building and grounds budget, salaries and wages, $2,188,161. Expenses, $953,075. And although we're not voting, I will just mention that there is the deduction of trust funds of $10,000. DPW Snow and Ice, salaries and wages, $189,636. DPW Snow and Ice expenses, $484,000. Electricity expenses, $329,000. Sanitary landfill expenses, $706,337. Health Department, salary and wages, $308,084. Expenses, $16,850. On that page, I've heard nothing questioned. Next page, Council on Aging, salaries and wages, $370,534. Expenses, $26,200. Youth Commission, salaries and wages, $233,663. Expenses, $7,700. Veteran Services expenses, $100,929. Trustees of Soldiers Memorial expenses, $2,800. Library, salaries and wages, $912,236. Expenses, $308,324. Recreation, salaries and wages, $213,734. Cultural Council, expenses, $4,500. Historical Commission, salaries and wages, $13,460. Expenses, $5,700. Debt, expenses, $12,384,505. On that page, I heard no questions. Next page. Country Club Enterprise, salary and wages, $150,867. Question. Country Club Enterprise expenses, $502,311. Hang on, just making notes. Sewer enterprise, salaries and wages, $828,817. Expenses, $453,198. Debt, $693,000. Wastewater treatment plant, salaries and wages, $31,464. Expenses, $5,154,250. Water enterprise, salaries and wages, $694,024. Expenses, $2,142,586. Debt, $1,514,386. Westboro Schools Department at the bottom of the page, the rest are just summaries. Westboro Schools Department, $57,121,155. On that page, all I heard questioned were country club enterprise salaries and wages. So let's review. Let me just flip through my notes here. So of all the items that I read, which were motions made on behalf of Mr. Beretti, I heard the Board of Selectmen Town Manager salaries and wages questioned. I heard the Economic Development salaries and wages questioned. And I heard the country club salaries and wages questioned. At this point, those are the only question items I have. Anyone, any other thoughts from the auditorium?
No, sir.
Okay. With that said, excluding those items that I just mentioned, Board of Selectmen salary and wages, Economic Development salary and wages, and country club salary and wages, our action comes on Mr. Beretti's motion and the amounts read by me on his behalf. Will all those in favor of Mr. Beretti's motion on the line items, except for those that have been questioned, please raise your voting slip. So this is every line item except the 3 that are questioned. All right, you may put them down. All those opposed? I see none in opposition here. I see some opposition, 1 or 2 opposition here. Mr. Gold, report from the gym? From the auditorium?
No opposition.
No opposition. In that case, on those items, we have a majority vote with a handful of opposition. That motion carries. All right. And now we go back. So who had the question? May I ask the person who had the question about the Board of Selectmen salaries and wages to please address the microphone and ask the question? And, also, I didn't, in my haste, when a voter speaks, please first of all, hold your voting slip so we know you're a voter, then give your name and address.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive.
Yep.
Whenever we have a budget item that grows by 20%, I just would like to understand the rationale for it. So no other objection than that, but if we could have someone just kind of address why the increase.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Williams.
So in addition to some step increases and the 2% increase for non-union staff, the bulk of that increase is the addition of the HR coordinator. So the HR coordinator, we did take a position out of the treasurer's office, moved it into the Selectman Town Manager's office to be the HR coordinator under the Assistant Town Manager, who's our HR director. And so that's really the bulk of that increase.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Any follow-up questions here in the gym? Any follow-up questions on this item from the auditorium?
No, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. In that case, our action comes on the motion for Board of Selectmen Town Manager salaries and wages in the amount of $524,184. Will all those in favor please raise their voting slips? All right, put them down, please. All those opposed? All right, I see 1. Report from the auditorium, Mr. Gold?
No opposition.
No opposition, so therefore it is a majority vote with 1 or a few in opposition. The motion carries. Thank you. We next move, hang on, just gonna make some notes here. We next move to the next questioned item, which was economic development, salary and wages. Will the person who questioned that item please, is that you again? Okay, on behalf, just to save some time, Mr. Walsh again, just asking for an explanation of the large increase. Or actually, I guess the point is the report says 0% increase, and that seems to just be a typo. So we'll have Ms. Williams.
So it's an 87.8% increase, which is also looks like a large increase. But as I mentioned in my initial presentation, the economic development position was only funded for 6 months in FY21 and is fully funded for the 12 months in 22. And the other percentages are accurate.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Any other discussion here in the gym? Seeing none, we'll move to the auditorium. Any more discussion here in the auditorium?
No questions.
Okay, with no further questions, your action comes on the motion economic development salaries and wages of $68,542. Will all those in favor please raise their voting slips? Thank you. All those opposed? Okay, I see one or two in opposition. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
Okay, in that case, the motion carries. Obviously, a majority vote with one or two in opposition. The motion carries. We now move to our next questioned item. Hang on, I just got to move ahead here. I believe the only remaining questioned item was country club salaries and wages. Yes. Go ahead. Your question, please.
Yes, Andrew Koenigsberg, 3 Smith Street. Perhaps I missed the explanation. Just want to know why the salary budget doubled.
Ms. Williams.
Previously, the salary for previously the golf course management was done through a contract with the golf course manager, and so that would have been in the expenses line. Now that it's a town employee, that cost moves into the salary and wages line. Additionally, the previous contractor was responsible for hiring all seasonal staff, so that cost has shifted into the salary and wages line as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Thank you, Mr. Koenigsberg. Any other questions? Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. With the country club expenses, I mean, it gets a little confusing with the enterprise funds and how things shift around, but is it actually costing the town more out of our tax budget? Because I thought it was supposed to be kind of self-sufficient. And so if you could address that, because it just seems like we're getting charged on our taxes for a lot more stuff with the golf course now.
Ms. Williams?
So prior to it being an employee, the town also through the contract didn't recognize all of the revenues of the country club operations, and so the contractor, previously recognized revenues such as cart fees and other things. And so now that it's coming under the town through the recreation department, the town will recognize all of the revenues. However, since we've never actually recognized those revenues, in talking to the Department of Revenue at the state, they're only allowing us to estimate at this point $500,000. So if it comes back that we receive more than that, then we could come back at the October town meeting and make an adjustment. But you're correct. So there's $500,000 of the budget is proposed to come out of the anticipated revenues, the enterprise fund, and then $153,000 would be raised on the taxes.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Any other discussion on this item from the gym? Seeing none, any discussion from the auditorium?
No, sir.
Okay, with no other discussion, your action comes on Mr. Beretti's motion read by me for Country Club Enterprise salaries and wages of $150,867. All those in favor? All right, put them down, please. All those opposed? I see 2 or 3 in opposition here in the gym. Report from the auditorium.
Almost an exact 50-50. I think we're 4 and 3 against. Maybe.
Okay, so it's so majority. The majority carries in the gym. I mean, in the auditorium. You want to count them if you want?
What did you vote?
I mean, we have.
Yeah, sorry, we are a majority.
Majority, okay. Majority in the auditorium and much more than a majority here. So therefore, I'll declare the motion carries. And surprisingly enough, perhaps at 9:52 a.m., we have a budget. earliest probably ever, but that's because we started at 9 o'clock and not 1 o'clock. Our action now comes on Article 3, regularly recurring articles. May I have a motion, Capital Improvement Plan. May I have a motion, Mr. Edinburgh?
Good morning, Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I move that the town vote to approve Article 3, Sections A through D, and that the town vote to transfer and appropriate the sum of $250,000 from free cash, transfer and appropriate the sum of $50,000 from water retained earnings, and transfer and appropriate the sum of $50,000 from sewer retained earnings for the purpose of Article 3A, to transfer and appropriate the sum of $7,280 from free cash for the purpose of Article 3B, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $14,000 for the purpose of Article 3C, and raise and appropriate from the Cable TV Enterprise Fund the sum of $300,000 for the purpose of Article 3D, as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. Any presentation or
A couple of comments.
comments? Yes.
Okay. These are articles that town meeting votes on every year. This year, the town has added tuition reimbursement to this article. 3A are the reserve funds, which set aside funds for unplanned expenses, with $250,000 in the general fund, $50,000 each in the water and sewer funds. These funds are under the Advisory Finance Committee's control. Article 3B is the restocking of Sandra Pond. This article paid for the restocking of Sandra Pond in 2021 and 2022. Donations are also used for this, but the town annually is asked to appropriate the balance in order to provide an ongoing source to adequately stock Sandra Pond. 3C is tuition reimbursement. This funds tuition reimbursement to meet the town's obligations under the collective bargaining agreements and personnel policies. 3D is our cable TV budget for Westboro TV. This article seeks to fund the fiscal 2022 cable TV budget, which is composed of the funds received by Westboro TV on behalf of the town from the cable licensing agreements between the town and the cable providers. This article has no tax implications to the residents of Westboro. It is simply the mechanism to allow these expenditures to be recognized on the town's financial records. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. Any discussion here in the gym? I see none. Any discussion? Oh, wait, do you have one? Okay. What? Okay. Yes.
Janet Anderson, 7 Tronci Street. I'm curious about the restocking of Sandra Pond. Do we still have fishing licenses or something to reimburse the town for that cost, or is that just me subsidizing someone else's hobby?
Anyone like to address the restocking of Sandra Pond? Looks like we have our Recreation Department Director.
Hi, Jen Kirkland, Recreation Director. So this article looks a little different than it has in past years. We took it off the warrant last year due to COVID, and so typically the fish are stocked in early March. It's due to the water temperature, so we need the funds available ahead of time. So the reason it is a little bit higher than it normally is because we need the funds for this year. We were able to stock the pond earlier or last month, and then we'll have the funds available for next year. This is a great community activity. A lot of people enjoy fishing up at the reservoir. When we stocked the pond a couple of months ago, we had maybe 10, 15 kids out there helping the wardens get the fish in the lake. It was really great to see. So it's a great thing for the community. I hope that answers your question.
Ms.
I
Anderson?
didn't hear you address my question. Is there some incoming funds from those
I'm
fisher
sorry.
people to offset that amount, or am I subsidizing that fund for other people?
So we did have a few donations this year because it was uncertain if we were going to be able to put this on the warrant. So we did have, I think we've received about $300 from donations. The Sandra Pond wardens used to fundraise, but they were having a lot of trouble raising the amount of money to fund this. So that's why it comes before you at town meeting.
Well, I oppose this then. I'm definitely voting against it, and I would urge others to as well. I have hobbies that no one is subsidizing, and I don't see the point.
Thank you. Was there another hand here in the gym? Yes, would you, one of the voter microphones, please.
Daniela Carrigo, 7 Westminster Way, and mine is about 3C, the money for tuition reimbursement. I believe that there should be a salary cap. Only people that are making $70,000 a year or less should be eligible for that, the same as those of us that are required to pay for tuition for our kids going to college or out of our own pockets for tuition for jobs right now. I don't think it's advisable to have people that are making a lot of money at taxpayer expense also have taxpayers pay for them to take classes.
Thank you. Anyone like to address that or just leave the comment? Yes. I don't know. I think it was a comment that she thought that it should only, I don't think this is a motion to allocate money only, so a motion to change the policy would not be appropriate for town meeting. Any policy change to how tuition works would have to be addressed through the selectmen, I believe. All right? Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Mr. Bain.
Yes, as I read this, is this part of contracts already established?
First of all, Mr. Bain, name and address, and then...
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Ed Bain, 5 Thomas Rice Drive.
And which part, which of the...
I'm doing the tuition reimbursement.
The tuition reimbursement, do you want to know whether the tuition reimbursement is negotiated as part of town contracts? Is that what you're asking?
Correct. The first line of the article information reads, this article funds tuition reimbursements to allow the town to meet its obligations to the collective bargaining units and personnel policy.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Bain.
So
I'll ask.
I just want to know if it's sort of already fixed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bain. Ms. Williams.
Yes, so we do have settled contracts, and so this funds our obligation for the settled contracts for all of our unions. And then there's also tuition reimbursement available to non-union employees through our personnel policies.
Okay, good. I rise in support of this. I think at different levels, particularly at upper management levels, sometimes the education is even more important than some other positions, not to downgrade those, but I think there shouldn't be a salary limitation on tuition reimbursement.
Thank you, Mr. Bain. Mr. George.
Paul George, 19 Robin Road. Just speaking on the restocking of Sandra Pond, in order for you to have a healthy water system, you do need fish. You can't have an open pond without organic life to actually keep it moving the way it's supposed to move. So in reality, funding it as a special thing, it should really be part of the maintenance of the pond itself, not just something we do for recreation. Because without the fish, you'd find that the pond would not stay as pure and clean as it does the way it is now. So I find it odd that we have to actually fund it with contributions or special entries into a warrant when we actually need the reservoir to actually sustain healthy water supply.
Thank you, Mr. George. Ms. Anderson.
Jana Anderson, 7 Tronci Street. Just to clarify, the fish that are stocked, and it's Sandra Pond, not Chauncey Pond, but the fish that are being put in there are game fish. They're there for fishing purposes. Fish will always naturally live in that pond. There will be sunfish, perch, that type of thing, and they will keep the water clean. These are game fish that are being stocked.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Time to jump to the auditorium. Any commentary from the auditorium, Mr. Gold or Ms. Blazewski?
No comments, no questions.
Comments. Any other questions, comments here from the gym? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Edinburgh's vote. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Point of order, yes. There has been no discussion to take them separately, so I was going to take them all at once. Is that okay? You want me? Are you going to ask that we take them one at a time?
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive.
Okay.
I'd like to take them separately because there's been discussion about several of the articles.
All right. I guess just as a prerogative of the moderator, I can do that similar to what we, I was thinking of doing that, but then didn't, so I will let us presume that the discussion we'll take the discussion as if each item were questioned, and we'll vote on them separately just so we can be very clear. And I will allow that because that's the way we do it under the budget. So let's act on them individually, just to be clear, it doesn't do any harm. We'll act on Article 3A, Reserve Funds. All those in favor? Reserve funds only, 3A. Okay, any opposed? I see none opposed to 3A. Any in the gym? I mean the auditorium?
No opposition.
Okay, so 3A unanimous. We now move to 3B, restocking Sandra Pond. All those in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Hang on, 1, 2, 4, 5. I see 5 in opposition. Report from the auditorium?
We had a majority in favor.
Majority in favor and much more than a majority here, so therefore the motion carries in total. Section C, tuition reimbursement. All those in favor? Okay, all those opposed? I see 1 or 2 in opposition. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
In that case, it's a majority. The motion carries. 3D, cable TV enterprise budget, the cable TV budget through the Cable TV's Enterprise Fund. All those in favor? Any opposed? All those opposed? I see none in opposition. Report from the gym?
None in opposition.
None in opposition, therefore 3D carries. So we have A, B, C, and D all carrying. The motion's all carried. For B, we had approximately 5 in opposition, and for C, we had 1 or 2 in opposition. But last I checked, we had more than 80 or so, and it's probably more than that voters here, so obviously a majority vote. The motion carries. We now turn our attention to Article 4. Article 4. We have a motion from the Recreation Commission. Is Ms. Travis here? If not, is there someone who can make the motion on her behalf? Oh, she is here. Oh, sorry, didn't see you moving. Got to learn to look through this glass better. Ms. Travis.
I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $2,500 for the purpose stated in the article as printed in the warrant.
Okay, the purpose as stated in the warrant is for a July 4th block party. Any comments before we move to discussion, Ms. Travis, or anyone from the Recreation Department? Ms. Kirkland.
Hi, Jen Kirkland, Recreation Director. This article is typical of town meeting. We hold this event every year. We haven't been able to hold the block party since 2019, obviously due to COVID. We are planning to hopefully hold some version of the block party later on this summer, as long as COVID continues to trend downward. This money helps support the expenses of a really, really fun community event.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkland. Discussion here in the gymnasium. I'll try to move around so I can see people. All right, I see no discussion here. Discussion from the auditorium?
No questions.
No questions. In that case, our action comes on Ms. Travis's motion to transfer and appropriate from free cash $2,500. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. All those opposed? I see 1 in opposition. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
Okay, I see 1 in opposition. The rest majority. The motion carries. Thank you. We now turn our attention to Article 5, Lake Tronci treatment. Again, Ms. Travis. If you could give your address. That's all right. That's all right.
Beth Travis, 65 Adams Street. I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $17,000 for the purpose stated in the article as printed in the warrant.
And the purpose stated in the warrant is Lake Chauncey treatment. Again, Ms. Kirkland.
Hi, Jen Kirkland, Recreation Director. This article is asking for $17,000 for the treatment of Lake Chauncey. In 2019, we had a pretty severe algae problem that forced us to shut the beach down for 2 weeks, even more time. We had some days there, here and there, that had to close. The algae problem has been a long-standing problem, but it usually happens later in the summer, and in 2019, it was much worse than it usually is. It's never impacted our beach season. So last year, we were able to pay out of recreation funds for the a copper sulfite treatment that worked well. We didn't open the beach last year, but after speaking with the company that did the treatment, the algae levels stayed low. The Board of Health, to my knowledge, did not receive any complaints. So this treatment is effective. We realize that this is not a long-term solution. The next article will kind of get into what we hope to do in the future as more of a sustainable treatment to the algae, but this works for now. So I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkland. Ms. Anderson.
Jana Anderson, 7 Chauncey Street. I just want to state so that everybody knows that we never had I live on Lake Chauncey, and we never had an algae problem at all until the fields north of Lake Chauncey on the old state hospital property were built. Since they built those playing fields and started over-fertilizing them, we have had an algae problem. So this is a problem that we created ourselves, and I would suggest that in the future going forward, the way to treat the algae is to greatly reduce the chemicals used on those fields. That's not a question about the article, but I just want to make sure everybody here is aware of that.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions or commentary from the gymnasium? Seeing none, any questions, commentary from the auditorium?
No questions.
No questions from the auditorium. Therefore, our action comes on Ms. Travis's motion to raise and appropriate $17,000 for the purpose stated in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. All right, any opposed? All those opposed? I see one in opposition, maybe two. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
Okay, in that case, with one or two in opposition here, in this room, and none in there, the motion carries. Article 6. A nutrient evaluation study of Lake Tronci. Mr. Koenigsberg.
Andrew Koenigsberg, 3 Smith Street, on behalf of the Conservation Commission. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate free cash in the sum of $25,000 for the purpose stated in the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Koenigsberg. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. Ms. Kirkland.
Jen Kirkland, Recreation Director. So as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, this study would take a look at the water body as a whole. It'll also address things, as Mrs. Anderson had pointed out, is how are there things the town can do, can abutters do to help reduce the algae or what causes algae in the lake. So this would be done in phases. It would be kind of a long-term look at the body of water and what we can do as a longer-term, more sustainable solution for the algae problem so that we don't have to keep coming back for the copper treatment yearly.
Thank you, Ms. Kirkland. Questions, comments, pros, cons from the gymnasium? Yes, feel free to address one of the voters' microphones.
Yeah, Jerry McCullough, 27 Overlook Drive. I was just wondering, I believe the town pumps water out of Lake Chauncey for use of all the residents. I'm wondering why this money wouldn't be coming from the water department budget if that in fact is the case.
Anybody want to answer that? Ms. Kirkland. Thank you, Mr. McCullough. Hang on.
Maybe we'll have Chris Pant, the DPW director, speak to that maybe, or...
Okay, we'll have Mr. Pant answer. Thank you.
The short answer is we do not pull drinking water from Lake Chauncey. It's pulled from wells that are near Chauncey, but separate water source.
Thank you. So
so it's not town that's pumping, it's abutters? Is that what you're saying? The wells?
Our town water, we do not get water from Lake Chauncey as town water for residents.
Oh, okay.
All right. All right, thank you. Yes, gentleman here, did you have a question? Can you go, name, address, and go to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Daniel Shore, 26 Haskell. I think just a little clarification. The wells are in the aquifer area of Lake Chauncey. I think that's what the gentleman was asking. The wells that encroach it's not, it doesn't have to do with the funding of this, but I think he's concerned because the wells are within the aquifer area. I think that's the question.
Yes, so, yeah, we have Lake Chauncey as surface water. We draw water from groundwater, which is in an aquifer under the ground, somewhere probably near Lake Chauncey. But the two are not connected, and our water that we bring into the treatment plant before it goes out to the community is tested regularly for all kinds of things. So I guess if the concern was the potential for any sort of contaminant in our water from the algae, that's not the case.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Payne. Any discussion from the auditorium?
No questions.
No question from the auditorium. Any more discussion here in the gymnasium? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Koenigsberg's motion to transfer and appropriate from free cash $25,000 for the purpose stated in this article. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none in opposition here. Report from the auditorium.
None in opposition.
None in opposition. I'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 7, the Capital Improvement Plan. Mr. Johnson.
Ian Johnson, 9 Burtis Adams Way. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $28,435 for the purposes of Article 7A. Transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $86,000 for the purposes of Article 7B. Transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $378,662 and appropriate from the Capital Stabilization Fund the sum of $366,338 for the purposes of Article 7C. Transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $130,000 for the purposes of Article 7D. Transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $40,666, and transfer and appropriate from water retained earnings the sum of $40,667, and transfer and appropriate from sewer retained earnings the sum of $40,667 for the purposes of Article 7E. Transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $80,006. Transfer and appropriate from water retained earnings the sum of $40,000. And transfer and appropriate from sewer retained earnings the sum of $40,000 for the purposes of Article 7F. Transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $66,666. Transfer and appropriate from water retained earnings the sum of $66,667. And transfer and appropriate from sewer retained earnings the sum of $66,667 for the purposes of Article 7G. Transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $45,000 for the purposes of Article 7H. Transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $245,900 for the purposes of Article 7I. And transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $171,650 for the purposes of Article 7J.
Any comments, sir?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just a few comments here, and please correct me if I missed something there. That was a long one. But anyways, the fiscal year 2022 to 2026 capital improvement plan reflects the implementation of a newly adopted capital planning policy that expands the planning process to identify and include all capital projects across all departments. So this was new for the town, where some things were not included in that. This new plan now includes all capital projects across all departments. So implementation of this amended policy will include significant capital expenditures, as I said, that were not previously reviewed and included as part of the town's capital planning process. Fully achieving the goal of developing a comprehensive town and school-wide plan will be a multi-year effort, and the town continues to fund the capital requests per the comprehensive fiscal management policies, which in summary prescribes funding capital replacement at between 1 and 1.5% of the general fund operating budget. This plan as presented includes general fund capital costs equaling 1.22%, all funded through free cash. Thank you.
Thank you. Based on the feedback from Article 3, I think I'm going to do this similar to the budget, where we focus our discussions on those that people have questions on. So I'm not going to reread all of the numbers. I'm just going to go through the various parts. People call out question if they want to discuss further, and then we'll act on all the unquestioned ones. So I think that'll be the most efficient way to do a lengthy multi-part article like this. So vehicle replacement, animal control, 7A. Any questions? Questioned. Articles 7B, personal protective equipment for the fire department, 7B. Any questions? Article 7C, engine 2 replacement, fire department. Any questions?
Question.
Question. Okay, we're going to question that. That needs to be voted separately anyway because it requires a different quantum of vote. 7D, police cruiser replacement. Any questions? Question on 7D. 7E, one-ton utility truck with crane replacement for the DPW. Seeing none. 7F, one-ton pickup truck with plow replacement for the DPW. Question on F. 7G, loader replacement for the DPW. 7H, building condition assessment by Building and Grounds. Question on H. 7I, high school gym partition replacement. Question on 7I. 7J, Hastings School sprinkler system installation. I don't think I heard a question for that. So what I heard here in the gym is questioned were 7A, C, D, F, H, and I. Anything different from the auditorium?
That sounds right.
That sounds right. Okay. With that said, our first action is going to be on B, E, G, and J. So those were the unquestioned items. Your action comes on a majority vote on 7B as in boy, E as in Edward, G as in George, J as in John. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Okay, all those opposed? I see none in opposition. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
Okay, those pass unanimously. We will now discuss and act individually on the questioned items. So let's start with 7A, the vehicle replacement for animal control. Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. Typically, as we replace some vehicles that have hit the end of life, if they still have some useful life left into them, we kind of move them down the chain so other departments can take advantage of it. I think the one from the animal control definitely is at its complete end of life, but in section 7F, we've got a 2011 truck that we're looking to retire that's only 10 years old, and so the question I have is, could that serve as part of the animal control rather than buying a new vehicle? And if that's not possible, which, I mean, it might just have been that truck really is the 7F, 2011 truck might be too old, but just to hear some comment on that. And then the other question I have in general about these vehicles is that if we're holding vehicles for 20 years, we really want to look at what type of fleet do we want to have 20 years from now. And so I do want to encourage all the departments, even if it's not for this year, but for next year, to be thinking toward, increasing the number of hybrid and electric vehicles that we're proposing the town buy, to kind of position us where we want to be 20 years from now.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Chief Laurie.
Jeff Laurie, police chief. The backstory on this is Melinda McKendrick, the vehicle that she's operating now is a 2002 hand-me-down from the DPW. It's got over 120,000 miles on it, and you're correct, it'll be scrapped. It has no air conditioning, which again can be difficult on the employee, but also on the animals. So the vehicle that we're purchasing is basically specifically for animal control. It's designed for that. It's within Sustainable Westboro's range for mileage, and it really is conducive for what Melinda McKendrick does. And we expect to have this vehicle, I'm hoping, 15, 20 years. But it is a vehicle, it's a transit van that is really conducive for what she does. And hopefully you'll support this article. And as far as, we are looking to replace our vehicles with hybrids when possible. I'm even, be honest with you, looking at through our fleet maintenance program, we're actually looking at a cruiser version of Tesla to see if that's something that we want to try here in Westboro. So we are embracing 100% sustainable Westboro and ensuring that we purchase whenever possible. We are exempt due to some vehicles that we may need, like I said, due to equipment or different things, but that's our plan moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Lurie. Ms. Williams.
I just wanted to speak to the second question regarding fuel-efficient vehicles. So the town of Westboro is a green community, and to maintain that status and maintain eligibility for grants, we are required under criteria 4 of the Green Community Act to meet very specific criteria related to the fuel efficiency of our vehicles. And so we have continued to meet that. I would say that since that was adopted in 2018, that criteria has actually become more strict. And so we continue to follow that. And actually the Board of Selectmen will be taking up that policy in an upcoming meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Any comments from the auditorium?
No comments.
Any more comments from the gym? Seeing none, the action comes on Mr. Johnson's motion regarding Article 7A, Vehicle Replacement Animal Control. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none opposed. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
Okay, in that case, Article A, also unanimous vote. We now turn our attention to 7A. We now turn our attention to 7C, dealing with Engine 2 replacement. And I will mention that this motion requires a 2/3 vote because it includes a transfer of the Capital Stabilization Fund. So what was the question on Article 7C?
Yeah, just a second. I'm coming to the microphone.
Okay.
Lucille Kylo. Gilmore Farm Road. Question is more for clarification. As I read the article, it looks as though this is for either one replacement vehicle or replacing or rehabbing another one. We're looking at $750,000, and I want some clarification on that.
Okay, so Ms. Kyle's question is about just give clarification on Engine 2 replacement. Is this replacing, rehabbing, or whatever? Mm-hmm. Fire Chief stepping up to the podium. Chief.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Purcell, and I serve as your fire chief here in the town of Westboro. I just want to make sure I got the question right, and I apologize. Are you asking me if this is for a full replacement or a refurbishment of a vehicle?
Yes.
So this is for a full replacement of a 1996 Pierce Sabre fire truck.
Okay. Does that satisfy, or do you want more detail?
Do you go out to bid for this normally, or is there just very few dealers who would actually produce a product like that?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Do you go out to bid for that? Or?
Yeah, do you go out to bid for that?
No, I use a purchasing group called HGAC, a Houston Galveston Area Coalition. There are several purchasing groups that we're allowed to use. I did contact about 5 vendors, and I can tell you that the quotes that came in for our apparatus were all consistent, all within a few $1,000s of each other. And the reason why we are choosing the vendor that we did is primarily because of service, and that to me is more important, warranty and service, And it's the same person that we bought our new aerial truck from 2 years ago. And we have had probably the best service for fire apparatus that I've seen in the last 31 years. So that's the vendor I'm choosing.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
That clarifies it.
Okay. 7C, any more questions? Yes, Mr. McCullough?
I just have one other question, quick question for the fire chief. I'm wondering, on these type of vehicles, what sort of warranties and do we get on these vehicles from the manufacturers? You know, people are all familiar with cars and stuff, but this is a special piece of equipment. Do you get 5 years, 10 years, or?
So it's all component dependent. So like the frame that we got on the last truck and the frame we're getting on this truck, that's a 20-year, which lines up with the end of life of the apparatus. And the frame is usually the most important part of these pieces of apparatus because of corrosion and because of the amount of weight that we carry on the truck, meaning the equipment, not mine. But it varies. So we put Wayland lights on the truck. The Wayland lights are warranted for 5 years. We put a waterless pump on the truck. The waterless pump is warranted, I believe, for 10 years. So we get a large manual, and the warranties are all spelled out, and that's part of my responsibility to go through those when we purchase a truck. The majority of the drivetrain in the vehicle is warranted for 20 years.
Yeah. Now, is the existing engine have any value where you're trading that in along with getting the new pumper?
So this pumper is probably going to get scrapped. It doesn't have a lot of the NFPA requirements that are required today. It doesn't have, like the animal control, this one doesn't even have air conditioning. The pump fails pretty much the pump test every July when I do it, and I have to put money into that pump. At a maximum on a trade-in, I'll probably get us $5,000. One thing I was considering trying, but I wouldn't put that in motion until the new truck, if approved, is near completion, was try to sell it outright to perhaps a smaller community in a different state. I did that with Rescue One when we replaced that in 2018. So instead of we ended up trading that in, and then they brokered it for us, and we ended up getting a little bit more than the $5,000. And I was going to try to do that with this truck as well. But I don't see us getting much more than $5,000.
Okay. And do you have to go out for public bid on this, or is this a specialty equipment where you just go to 3 or 4 people that are capable of making these sort of vehicles?
So we do not have to go out to public bid if we use a purchasing group. And the purchasing group dissects out an entire pre-built plan that we have and make sure that we're being fair to the vendor and the vendor is being fair to us. There are several that we have the option to use. One is through the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts. There's the Greater Boston group. There's Plymouth County's group. But I use one which is now becoming popular in the fire service because of the amount of money we saved on bonding out the truck through the Houston-Galveston Area Coalition. You can look that up online. It's hgac.buy.com, and you can read all about it in there. And they do a lot of fire apparatus, ambulances, and highway vehicles. And we save, using that purchasing group, about $12,000. We will save about $12,000 versus doing one of the local purchasing groups.
Thank you, Chief Purcell. Any more questions from the auditorium?
No questions.
Okay. Our action comes on Mr. Johnson's motion regarding 7C, Engine 2 replacement. I will say this requires a 2/3 vote because of the use of the capitalization fund. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none in opposition. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
No opposition. I will declare that a unanimous vote, obviously more than 2/3. We now turn our attention to Article 7D, police cruiser replacement. Question on 7D. Sorry, 7C, the motion carried unanimously, more than 2/3. Mr. Rigo.
So I understand the need.
Name and address again, I know.
7 Westminster Way.
Thank you.
I understand the need for replacing police cruisers fairly often, and the last replacement, they spoke about hybrids as being a big deal. Hybrids actually are not the most sustainable, and I would move to push for an all-electric, and then in next year's budget, to look at the saved maintenance cost. If you have an all-electric vehicle, you no longer need oil changes, and there's just a lot of engine maintenance issues that are no longer part of the picture. So I really, truly believe that it is time for Westboro to think about all-electric vehicles. There is quite a selection and option there, and then to separate out the savings and maintenance by going all-electric. And if they're, regardless of the kind of vehicle, I think it should be painted in such a way that it's very, very obvious that it's a police vehicle. The all-black SUVs that we have now are not. Every time I drive back by an all-black SUV, I'm not sure if it's a police cruiser or something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dorigo. I'm sure that the selectman and town manager and everyone's heard the comments about the painting and the source. Our action is just coming on providing money for whatever policies they have in place. Any discussion from the auditorium?
No discussions.
No discussion. Any more from here in the gym? No more discussion. Our action comes on Mr. Johnson's motion regarding Article 7D, the police cruiser replacements. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Please, thank you. All those opposed? I see 2 or 3 in opposition here. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
No opposition. In that case, it's a majority vote. The motion carries. Thank you. We now turn our attention to the next questioned item, which was Article 7F, the 1-ton pickup truck with plow replacement. Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. It was a little bit related to the earlier question 7A about whether we might be able to repurpose some of these vehicles for the animal control. I guess the remaining question would just be a 10-year-old pickup truck that's used mostly for cemetery work and plowing over the winter. Is it really at the end of life? And could it be used for some other purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Payne. You can, if you want, Mr. Payne, you can use that microphone. We'll just have Mr. Mastroelli turn it on, or you can use this one, whichever one you prefer.
So specifically to its use, it's used every day. These trucks are the most frequently used trucks in our fleet. So they're not particular to a season or any time of the year. So these 2 trucks are at the end of their useful life. I think to the point that was made earlier about keeping vehicles for 20 years, that's not really our intent. What we want is a more predictable and sustainable fleet management program, and so by replacing these vehicles at the 10-year mark, which is typically the industry standard for vehicles in terms of when you'd want to start that replacement, we're kind of getting ahead of the curve of future issues that we have when we have these dated vehicles that, as you can see in the article, there's one that's 32 years old. And so we end up spending over the course of that time more money maintaining it than we should. And it's not just on buying parts, it's also on the lost man time in terms of not having a vehicle to use to go solve a problem. So, so yes, we absolutely look at opportunities to repurpose vehicles, and where we can, we will. If we can't repurpose it, we either surplus it and auction it, and so bring in, it's not a large amount of money, but a small amount of money to the town, or we trade it in to defer some of the cost for purchasing a new one.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Ms. Williams.
I just also wanted to mention that as part of that Green Communities criteria number 4, there are rules imposed on the community about which vehicles can be recycled. So if you are recycling a vehicle, it needs to be replacing a vehicle that it needs to be more fuel efficient than the vehicle it's replacing. Also, the DPW, based on the size of the truck, has some exemptions that other departments wouldn't necessarily have.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Discussion from the auditorium?
No questions.
Any more discussion from the gymnasium? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Johnson's motion with regard to Article 7F, the one-ton pickup truck with plow replacement. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none in opposition. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
No opposition. I will declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. We now turn our attention to Article 7H, dealing with the building condition assessment by Building and Grounds. Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. With regards to the Westboro Golf Club building, again, I thought that the golf club was supposed to be trying to run self-sufficient. I think we rent that building to the Civic Club, if I'm not mistaken. Why can't some of this fees associated with looking at maintenance and upkeep be rolled into rent increases if it's needed, and why are we bringing that back toward the town budget?
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I will clarify that the Civic Restaurant is not the Civic Club, it's the Civic Restaurant. So I just want to, for all the members of the Civic Club here, I want to make sure that. Ms. Williams.
So money that's received from the restaurant lease actually goes into the general fund. And we're in a long-term agreement with the restaurant, so that's actually coming up, I think, in FY23, where we would have to go back out to bid, so we wouldn't be able to change the terms of that at this point, but something that we could consider when we were, putting out the RFP.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Williams. Any questions from the auditorium?
No questions.
In that case, our action comes on Mr. Johnson's motion regarding 7H, building condition assessment. Will all those in favor please raise their voting slips? Thank you. Any opposed? I see 1 or 2 opposed. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
Okay, so it's 1 or 2 opposed. The majority vote passes with 1 or 2 in opposition. So Article 7H passes. And now the last unquestioned item, 7I, high school gymnasium partition replacement. Question, please. Looks like Mrs. Anderson.
Janet Anderson, 7 Tronci Street. I'm just curious what's wrong with the old partitions.
Okay, question about the partition.
Raghu Nandan, 4 Copper Beach Circle. So the partition was originally installed in 2000-2002 timeframe, and it's used on a daily basis to separate classes for shared gym classes and competitions. I'll show this picture. Metal pieces have been falling off the roof. This bracket that I'm showing here fell off the roof, and thankfully it didn't fall on anybody's head. So it is a big liability. The contractor, by the way, has refused to maintain this because of safety concerns and his liability. So we need to replace this. That's why we are seeking this money for this article. Thank you.
Hang on, we're just going to get the photos that he showed up on the screen so you can see. So you want to just go back? I think there was a previous picture that I saw fly by. Oh, no, sorry, next one. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that people in the room could see it. Yes, Mr. Durrett. Okay, Mr. Durrett is indicating it's the partition to my right, your left here in the gym. So all the people over there are now. Thank you, Mr. Durrett, for pointing out. So if you hear stuff fall, get out of the way. All right, any more discussion from here in the gym? Any discussion from the auditorium?
No questions.
No questions. In that case, our action comes on Article 7I, high school gymnasium partition replacement, from the motion made by Mr. Johnson. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none in opposition here. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
No opposition. That is a unanimous vote. So in the end, all 7A through J all passed. Not all unanimous, but mostly want to call out 7C that required 2/3 vote, passed easily by a 2/3 vote. Hang on, I just got to update my notebook here. We now turn our attention, sorry about that, to Article 8, the Open Space Fund. Do we have a motion from Mr. Silverberg? Mr. Silverberg, there he comes. Thank you, Mr. Silverberg.
Hey, Mark Silverberg, 7 Weld Street. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $15,000 for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Silverberg. Is there a brief presentation?
No.
Or just remarks?
Well, just a few remarks. Last year, most of you know, the town purchased 2 large open space parcels, 66-acre parcel and a 30-acre parcel. And I would like to thank everyone for that, authorizing that. But unfortunately depleted the open space fund to I think it's just under $10,000, and which leaves us very little money to pay for an appraisal and a survey should we pursue any further open space. One of the duties of the Open Space Committee is a Chapter 61 recommendation, and I don't know how familiar you are with Chapter 61 land, but it's a tax discount for open space, agricultural parcels, forestry parcels in town. Should those parcels be sold or be taken out of Chapter 61 for a different use, the Open Space Committee has 30 days to get an appraisal done to determine whether the town wants to exercise our right of first refusal and purchase the land or not. And so, given the time sensitivity, the Open Space Committee feels that we need a ready source of funds to pay for an appraisal should should a property come before us, and in order to make a recommendation to the town. So that's really all we're asking for is just a working fund so that we can pay for an appraisal should it become necessary. Again, we're not, we don't have anything on the horizon. It's just a fail-safe. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Silverberg. Questions from the gymnasium? Yeah, Mr. McCullough.
Yeah, Gerald McCullough, 27 Overlook Drive. I am glad that I may finally get an answer to a question that I've gone through the Conservation Commission. I was going to try to ask Andy Connersberg about the parcel on Eli Whitney, the 63-acre conservation land now. There was considerable amount of surveying done around that property with a lot of pink flags and what have you put on trees and what have you, property boundaries. But while the surveyors were working, I asked them, well, are these showing property lines or where my property is or where the town property, the conservation property starts? They had no answer. I went to our conservation person, I think his name is Jacob, and he had no answer for me. I was concerned about some of the tree degradation up there with either some sort of insect or bug attack killing the trees, taking the bark right off. So I'm wondering if I got no answer as to how those surveys or what the purpose of those surveys was. What are we spending the money on, or who has the answer to those questions?
Okay, Mr. McCullough, as you know, this action is on funding the Open Space Fund. If Mr.
Yes.
Silverberg has a quick answer, I will let him answer. But other than that, I would refer you to talk to people after the meeting.
Well, you're talking about surveying property, right? So
Yes.
if I can't get an answer to surveying,
Okay.
I don't think people should put any money up to something that we don't have any response from as far as what's being done with regard to our tax dollars as
Okay.
far as surveying.
Okay, thank you. I'll let Mr. Silverberry answer to the best of his ability.
Well, in order to purchase any property or determine the appraised value of any property, we need to get a survey done. The Eli Whitney parcel was actually surveyed into two parcels, one for conservation and one under the control of the selectmen. That was actually part of the survey intent. The Belknap Street property that we purchased last year, when we surveyed that, we actually found out it was 4 acres larger than we thought it was. So really, it's a requirement in order to purchase and again, to accurately value a property, you really need to know the size of the property, the frontage, and and to transfer a property, you have to have meets and bounds determined.
Thank you. Discussion from the auditorium?
No questions.
Any further discussion from the gymnasium? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Silverberg's motion to transfer and appropriate from free cash $15,000. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see 3 or 4 in opposition here. Report from the auditorium?
We had a majority vote.
Majority vote. So with many more voters in here than in there, we have a majority vote. The motion carries, with 3 or 4 in opposition spread in one room and probably 3 or 4 maximum in opposition to the other room. So the motion carries. We now move to Article 9, dealing with body-worn cameras. Ms. Marshall.
Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. I move to transfer from free cash the sum of $25,176 for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Transfer and appropriate, correct, Ms. Marshall?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, you forgot to say and appropriate. I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
Apologies.
All right, Ms. Marshall.
I believe our chief is going to give us a presentation.
Okay, Chief Laurie.
And while they're, oh, here it is. Jeff Laurie, Police Chief. We've been researching for grants for body-worn cameras since 2020. 2 attempts were made at the federal level. We did not score high enough on the federal score sheet to obtain the funding. We are in the accreditation process, and hopefully this time next year, that'll come to fruition. And we believe being a part of that will offset residual costs in the future. We were awarded a grant in the state level this past fall in the amount of $39,530, and an additional $25,176 would be needed to fully implement storage and licensing fees. This is the warrant article, which is correct. However, in the narrative portion below it, you'll see there's one typo. It should be not. There's no funding of positions in this article. This is just, like I said, for storage and the equipment. Annual cost, storage and licensing, is $26,302 per year. Public information requests, court discovery process will require a review of video footage to redact and protect privacy rights of individuals not directly involved. Anything involving the case, obviously, that there will be no redacting. Maintaining the program is both intensive and extensive. It is recommending personnel support at the executive level to maintain, monitor the program to ensure compliance and transparency. Police reform bill will also have an impact on the body-worn camera program. And Westboro has a tremendous opportunity to offset the cost as a pilot agency working alongside the Executive Office of Public Safety and State Rep Daniel Gregoire. So a little brief explanation on that. Secretary Turco approached me and asked if the town of Westboro would participate in this program, meaning that there would be potentially additional funding available for us as well by participating in this. So obviously I took that, we are honored to do that, and our Civil Rights Officer, Sergeant Daniels, is our liaison in that program. I was then contacted by Daniel Gregoire, who put in the budget this money for us to offset in the budget. It has been approved through the House, and now it just continues on. So I'm going to be honest. I'm hoping this money that I'm asking you for today, I'm not going to purchase anything until I hear from those two funding sources. I'm hoping to give this money back to the town. But I think it's imperative with what's going on right now that we embrace this program. I think this is very important for not only our officers, but for the community as a whole to show that we are transparent. So I'm hoping you do approve this. And with the left hand, I'm hoping to give it back. And in the future, we're going to aggressively go after grants or any type of funding that's out there, whether it be in the state or federal level, to take some of the burden off you folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Laurie. Questions, comments from the gymnasium? All right, just sort of create a socially distanced line and we'll get to you. We'll start off with Mr. Bain.
Yes, Ed Bain, 5 Thomas Rice Drive. I support this in general. Will this allow every officer and or senior leader to have a body camera at any incident, if you will?
That's a great question. So the frontline sergeants and officers, yes, they'll all have them. However, the lieutenants and our detectives, if they work patrol overtime shifts, they will have to wear them. So it's basically all your officers that you see in uniform that are working on the road will have these. I mean, there'll be one issue to the chief. So if I am going on a call, I'll put the body-worn camera on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bain. We'll now go to speaker at the back.
Excuse me, J.J. Malone, 45 Adams Street. My question is, are the police unions on board with this?
That's another great question. And right now, we're still writing the policy. It's a very intensive, obviously, policy. It is a change in working conditions. We're going to have to sit down with the unions. In my humble opinion, I'm not hearing any backlash. I think they know we as a profession need to embrace this, and I think it's going to show transparency in the department. And quite frankly, in many cases, this is a great training tool. If we're doing something wrong, we want to take corrective action, but in many cases, we're doing things right, and it's going to be able to show the courts and different things. I think it's going to help us all the way around with community support and court cases across the board. I think this is just a way, maybe not in my career time, but it may be, through police reform, this is mandated. But I'm 100% committed to this program. We've been looking into it, like I said, since 2020. It's just very expensive and very time-consuming.
Thank you, Chief Laurie. Mr. George.
Paul George, 19 Robin Road. My son, who works for the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department in the technical support area, he's responsible for maintaining and distributing power sources and cameras for 3,600 offices. And they made a mistake in the first year of not doing exactly what you want to do now. They did not deal with the ongoing maintenance, licensing, and support they needed, considering that they would have these cameras, and once they had the imaging, they were fine. And the catch-up money to figure out how to make that play, because they didn't do it up front, turned out to be an enormous expense. So this is a well-placed $25,000 to deal with, certainly not as large a department, but the issues are the same. It's just as hard if you don't have the licensing, the technical support to make this stuff play.
Thank you, Mr. George. Hang on just a second. Are there any comments from the auditorium?
No comments, thank you.
Okay, in that case.
Daniel Shore, 26 Haskell Street. Just out of curiosity, how many other municipalities in Massachusetts have body cams now?
I'm sorry, sir?
How many other municipalities in Massachusetts have cameras?
I mean, I'm not quite sure the exact number. I know the town of Upton, they have them. I know the city of Worcester is looking to implement. I know the state police is implementing. I'm not quite sure of that. I can research that for you.
So we'd be an early intervener, an early adapter.
I believe so, yes. I think that's what Westboro's all about. We're forward thinking. We've been looking into this for quite some time. We've really done our homework on this equipment as well. We found some cost savings due to software. I mean, we're committed to getting this done, and hopefully we have, town meeting support.
All right, yes. Yes. Name, address, and question, please.
Diane Boer, 6 Robin Road. I'm just interested in the process of developing the policies for the use of the cameras if you do move forward with this program, particularly things around what if an officer forgets to turn it on, turns it off for whatever reason in the middle of an encounter, and the chain of evidence, you know, how you maintain the security of the film. I mean, those are just examples, but my more relevant question is the process and whether the public will have an input in how those are developed, you know, those procedures. Just what are your thoughts on the process for how to use the cameras?
So we're going to develop the policy based on best practices and to be in line with accreditation. So we're going to be utilizing policies that are in place now that are proven and they're ready to go. As far as the camera itself, you're right. Just real quickly, what happens is it's continually recording, okay? So basically every 60 seconds, it continually records over itself. So if that officer gets out of the car to chase someone and goes, ooh, I forgot to turn it on, when he turns it on or she turns it on, it goes back 60 seconds. What the device also does is every 120 seconds, it'll vibrate. So it lets the officer know that it's on. There's also functions, and we haven't decided what we're going to do. Let's say an officer draws his taser or draws out his weapon or turns the blue lights on the cruiser. There's technology now that automatically turns that on because you're absolutely right. In times of stress, if you can imagine, you know, getting out of the car, you know, there's instances, you know, sometimes, you know, the officer, you forget to put your mask on, right? I mean, you're in your car by yourself, you're driving around, and something stressful happens. So we're looking into all of that, and you know, I give you my word as your chief. I mean, our policies and procedures, we are revamping the entire policy and procedure manual within the Westboro Police Department, best practices, and we are going to be an accredited agency, and that policy will be accredited, accepted policy that's going to be second to none. And my commitment to you folks is, when this project is done with our policy and procedures, I'm going to be basically putting them up on our website so you can look at all the police department policies if you want to review to see what we're doing. And like I said, I'm always open to suggestions from the public. You know, you have a fantastic police department, hardworking men and women that are here honestly to serve and provide a service that we believe is second to none here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Thank you, Chief Lurie. Mr. McCullough.
Jerry McCullough, 27 Overlook Drive. Just a side question on the use of the body cameras. Is there any potential savings to the town with regard to insurance or liability costs and stuff that the town may incur, either positive or negative, with the use of body cameras?
My opinion, I think it would, but I would defer to the town manager. We'd have to check with Maya, you know, our insurance carrier. Yeah, I don't have an answer for that question.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rigo.
Doctora Daniela Carrigo, 7 Westminster Way. Twice now, I have been in a retail store, once in line at a Target pharmacy, when a police officer with their radio on was in the store shopping, and you could hear all of the radio information coming out. So I knew who was being called for a domestic institute, who was being called for, and I felt like it was an incredible invasion of privacy and wrong. And I wonder how these cameras would be used to note when officers are doing things like that, because it's happened twice, and I'm not out that often.
I mean, when you see an officer with a body cam, he's going to tell, if you're having an interaction with him, he's going to let you know that you're being recorded.
No, I wasn't having any interaction. I have zero interaction with the police. I hate them. My children are terrified of them, traumatically. They've seen what police do to people of color on TV, and it's truly terrifying. Your police at the vigil did not take a knee, as they did in many other communities, so please don't say that you're the best. I've had no interaction. They were there shopping, and their radio was on very loud for everyone to hear everything that was happening.
Okay.
The addresses, the people, everything. So I wonder if these cameras will allow you to see that and say that that's probably not appropriate.
I don't know how to respond to that. I mean, we have police radios. We have to hear what's going on, you know, detectives, uniformed officers. As far as the body cams go, when I talked about redacting, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people that are there that aren't part of the situation, that they're removed, that those video images are removed so for their privacy. But like I said, I mean, it's not a perfect world. Sometimes the radio goes off. Detectives or officers are, you know, a lot of the officers have earpieces so you wouldn't hear. You know, I'm assuming this was a detective that you saw because, you know,
He was shopping.
Well, I can't comment. I mean, he could be there to investigate. He could be there getting something for the department. You know, I don't know.
He was getting personal things out of the pharmacy. It was
Okay.
very obvious.
Okay, thank you for bringing that to my attention.
And that, the same thing happened in Walmart, Target Pharmacy and Walmart.
Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. I was just wondering, you mentioned cameras. I assume this has microphones as well, or is it just video?
Yes, yes.
Microphones as well.
Yep. Audio and video.
All right, any discussion from the auditorium?
No questions, thank you.
All right. With that said, our action comes on Ms. Marshall's motion to transfer and appropriate $25,176 for the purpose of the article. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none in opposition. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
No opposition. I'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. We now turn to Article 10, Stormwater Infrastructure Improvements. Mr. Pant?
Chris Payant, Director of Public Works. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $135,000 for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Payant. Brief remarks?
So we've received, as you can see in the warrant, we received a grant. The grant requires contribution from the town, and well, it's two things actually. One is the town is required to appropriate the entire amount of the grant, $135,000. And then once we execute the grant, the town is asked to contribute a portion to the grant. So our portion in cash would be $36,000. The remaining funds in that article, once that grant is complete, would be applied to stormwater infrastructure improvements which are needed around the town.
Thank you, Mr. Payant. Questions, comments from the gym? Seeing none, any from the auditorium?
No questions.
No questions. Our action requires a majority vote coming on Mr. Payant's motion to transfer and appropriate from free cash $135,000. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none in opposition. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
No opposition. We'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 11, Town Sewer System Updates. Again, Mr. Payant.
I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from sewer retained earnings the sum of $1.8 million for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Payant, brief remarks.
And I would like to, Mark, if you can pull that up real quick. So I think the article is pretty straightforward, but I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity here just to show a quick picture because this will be work. Assuming you approve this article, you'd see this next summer, and I want to just take the opportunity to share what's going to be happening. So if you can see the picture up on the screen here, there's a red line. That red line depicts the sewer line that we're talking about. So much of the wastewater from the town flows from all different locations, but it ends up dumping into that red line, which is a main line to the wastewater treatment plant. So it flows along the line and then gets dumped into the treatment plant where it's treated. So in 2019, the town did some work to line a section of that pipe So this section here, I know the people in the back can't see the details, but the bottom line is we did a phase 1 of this project, essentially. So this money that we're asking for today funds the remaining line that's left that still needs to be lined. So when I say lined, that means we're not digging up the pipe. Ideally, we're putting, there's a mechanism to put material inside the pipe, which basically creates a pipe inside of a pipe. So it's less intrusive, we're not digging up roads, and it's a much cleaner way of getting the work done, and in some cases more quickly done. So this money, a portion of this $1.8 million funds that project, what I just mentioned, the remaining portion of the sewer line that needs to be repaired. The second piece of this article is related to the comprehensive wastewater management plan. So on the picture you saw indicated the wastewater treatment plant. So the town, it's regulated by the Department of Environmental Protection as to how much wastewater we can send to the treatment plant, because it dictates how much water they can send into the river after it's cleaned. So that's all permitted, it's done to the DEP. So the last time we did our wastewater management plan was 20 years ago, and that plan allows us to make decisions on where we need to make sewer improvements, expand sewer access to residents, and it also allows us to make decisions on allocation of our wastewater apportionment. So we allocate wastewater based on single-family residences, multifamily residences, and then commercial business properties. And each of those areas are allocated a certain amount of wastewater they can send to the plant. And we haven't looked at those numbers in a long time, or at least since this study was originally done. And obviously lots of changes happened over the past 2 decades. And we want to see if there's opportunities where we can reallocate that wastewater and potentially open up opportunities for what it could be anything. It could be more multifamily housing, it could be more commercial use, but the point is we need to get that look, and it's not something we can do internally. It has to be done externally by a consultant, and it has to be run through the Department of Environmental Protection once it's complete. But the town absolutely benefits from knowing that information, not only from a wastewater standpoint, but from an economic development standpoint in terms of where we want to allow investments in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Questions, comments? Mr. McCullough.
Jerry McCullough, 27 Overlook Drive. From the picture you got up there, I can't visualize what streets or what areas of town that you're showing up there. Could you kind of just give us an idea of where you work?
The Rotary's down here.
Oh, okay.
That's the Rotary. So this is Union Street. That's going down into where Roach Brothers is. So this is the line from here to here. And then that's like the railroad tracks. And I'll let you do the rest of it, Mr. Payne. I just wanted to let people know this is the Rotary down here.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, you did a good job. The part we're talking about is here.
So it's coming down like Milk Street and cutting.
Generally, that area of town, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now
we can talk to the precise location separately, but yes, that's the general area of town.
Right. Now, the other thing I'm wondering is, has the town ever done a complete camera survey or for the different parts of town to catch all the water infiltration that I'm sure we probably have within the sewer system? Because I've noticed, I was kind of shocked the last time I looked at my water sewer bill. I'm like, holy geez, I'm paying more for sewer than I am for the water coming into my house. It's like, you know, to treat the water that's going to the treatment plant, and where is it all coming from? You know, it'd be great to know whether it's all infiltration into the pipes, or are we putting that much industry into town that is putting a stress on the sewer system, you know?
So the answer is yes. I believe it was 2014 when the last study was completed. That's the reason I mentioned the wastewater management plan and this project is for exactly the reason you mentioned. They're related. So when we complete this, like when that red line up there is done, we've basically refurbished an entire section of pipe, and so the infiltration that you're referring to, so water that's leaking into our pipes that goes to the plant, which then increases our volume that we're sending to the plant, which means we can't send more wastewater to the plant because it's being filled up by stormwater. More detail than you probably care about, but the point is that they're linked. We have a plan. This is part of that plan. This is really the first major step of executing those repairs, and we'll be following on to other sections of sewer pipe after we take care of this section. So we do have a plan, and we're moving forward with it.
So it's like 1.8 million just to do this study?
No, it's 1.6 million roughly to do the project that's on the screen here, and about 200,000 to initiate the wastewater management plan study.
Oh.
So, which totals the 1.8.
Okay, okay.
All right. Hang on. Discussion from the auditorium?
No questions.
Okay, Mr. Bain.
Ed Bain, 5 Thomas Rice Drive. Given this, and particularly the infiltration issue by doing the pipe within the pipe, that will solve part of that problem. Will this increase the capacity at all of the current wastewater treatment plant?
Will it increase? Or?
Increase, because right now we're at limits. We can't hook up additional housing to the sewers because we're at our limit. Is that correct, first of all?
For multifamily, that is
For
that is
multifamilies,
correct.
yes.
We're not at the capacity for our plant. We're given a box that we can work out of. Inside of that box, we have other smaller boxes that we can apportion. So the multifamily box is full. But if we do this study and we decide there's capacity somewhere else, we can shift the boxes around and allocate more.
Right. I particularly ask this because I'm chair of the Westboro Affordable Housing Community Trust, Affordable Housing Trust. And we're looking, if possible, to develop or convert, where possible, units that would be multifamily, relatively density, small places, especially elderly, et cetera. And this is one issue that we are dealing with or concerned when we look at different opportunities. So right now it sounds like we might get some more, but nothing of substance. And I think that will go on to the Article 12 as well, so I may have questions on that. But I would support this. It can only help.
Yeah, but the short answer is I think this will answer and potentially alleviate some of the problems we've had recently in regards to multifamily development.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bain. Still nothing from the auditorium?
Still no questions.
Okay, in that case, our action comes on Mr. Payant's motion to transfer and appropriate from sewer retained earnings $1.8 million for the purpose of the article. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. All right. All those opposed? I see none. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
No opposition. We'll declare that a unanimous vote. We now move on to Article 12, improvements to the Westboro treatment plant. Is Mr. Burke here? Okay. Thank you. Just give him a chance to get here. You can come to this microphone. Motion, please. You can go here. Okay. Name, street address, and motion, please, Mr. Burke.
Tom Burke, 1 Linda Street. Article 12, improvement to Westboro treatment plant. Motion. I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $4 million for the purpose of this article as printed in a warrant, which funds will be combined with the monies borrowed under Article 21A of the May 12, 2007 annual town meeting, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, is authorized to borrow said $4 million under General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, or any other enabling authority, any premium received upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any such premium applied to the payment of the cost of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of cost approved by this vote in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 20, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to take any and all action as may be necessary or appropriate to effectuate the purposes of this vote. I'm going to read that again. Joke.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Would you like to make any remarks? Let's turn it over to Mr. Goodall. Okay. Mr. Goodall.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jack Goodall, Engineer Administrator for the plant. If I could have the first slide, please. Well, yeah, the picture one. While he's trying to find the picture, there you go. Okay. The primary reason for this article is to replace the rotors. One failed last summer. The board was able to handle it on the budget purpose, but there's 12 more to go. And by the time we get done with those, that one will have to be replaced. So we're looking at 13 rotors. And this is a picture of the end of the rotor. And it's 30 feet long and it bent in half. And if you could see, in the middle, it has a bunch of fins coming out of it. And there's a shaft that all the fins are connected to. And that's going into the water. It's not supposed to go into the water. It's supposed to stay consistent. It shows that it was bent. So just so you know what you're spending most of the money on, there's 13 of those. The next one, please. I'll just quickly spout off the items. Oh, that's easier than this. The proposed items that we'd like to do, replace the rotors and drives, replace the cloth filter material, install a secondary polymer makeup system, replace an exhaust fan, replace the grit screws, replace 2 trucks that we have. One is registered, one is site truck. Rehab an odor scrubber that's quite old, and it's our backup, but it's the only backup we have. And so if one of the current ones breaks, we're kind of cooked. Rehab the sludge holding tanks, replace the grit classifiers, and containment around the transformers. The board's proposing to do these items over 4 years. The primary reasoning is, with all the rotors that we have, if we do it all at once, it could affect the treatment system, and we'd have to get waivers from the state and EPA for that. So rather than do that, rather than affect the operations, we're doing it in a phased approach. And the reason we're asking for all the money up front is, in my opinion, right now we're on borrowed time. That rotor bent. And so if one bends while we're doing the upgrade, we can replace it. We'll have the money to replace it. If 2 bend, we'll have the money to replace it. We'll still have to work with the town hall on borrowing the money, but at least we'll have authorization. We don't have to keep on coming back. So that's why we want to do it all in one authorization, but spread it over 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Goodall. Mr. McCullough.
I have a question with regard to the $4 million. Everybody realizes, I guess, that the treatment plant serves both Westboro and Shrewsbury, and I think last I checked, I think Shrewsbury is a bigger percentage of use in the sewer treatment plant. So why are we putting up the $4 million, or is Shrewsbury putting up $4 million plus?
Mr. Goodall.
Mr. Moderator, the board operates under an intermunicipal agreement between the boards of selectmen for Westboro and Shrewsbury. Per that agreement, Westboro fronts the money, the budget, and articles, and is paid back in the fall and spring for the expenses in the articles and all that. Shrewsbury does pay about 60% in round numbers. Westboro pays about 35, a little bit over, and Hopkinton pays a little bit under 5%. But it's the way it was set up back in '79. We've done all of our expenses this way since then. But we'd have to change the IMA for that.
Thank you, Mr. Goodall. Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. Whereas this is critical infrastructure for Westboro, I would assume that if we were down for a week without any sewer, it would cause major problems all across town. And whereas critical infrastructure in the United States is under attack, we've seen the pipeline attacks in, along the East Coast. Is there anything in here that would be an improvement for security? Is there, or is this, have you thought about, maintaining security for our critical infrastructure, and how do we make sure that we are properly protected?
Mr. Goodall.
Okay. I'm not really a security expert. Haven't really worried too much about that for 20 years. Worry is a bad term. But basically, the entire plant is surrounded by a fence. It's gated, locked up, off hours, stuff like that. I don't know how to address the other stuff because there's nothing in here for security. It was, at this time, I don't think any, we do have the software protection for software, but, that would be about it. So.
All right, thank you. Maybe you and Mr. Burke could just take back to the sewer treatment plant board that there are questions from the community. Maybe they could be addressed through the proper forum. Anything from the auditorium?
No questions.
And I don't see any more here. Our action comes on Mr. Burke's motion to appropriate $4 million and authorize borrowing, things like that. Because this is a borrowing, it requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none in opposition. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
I will declare that a unanimous vote, obviously more than 2/3. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Burke. Thank you, Mr. Goodall. We now turn our attention to Article 13, extended contract for electric vehicle charging stations. Mr. Keogh.
Sean Keogh, 5 Yorkshire Circle. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you. Brief remarks, Mr. Keogh?
Sure.
Thank you.
State law does not allow a community to enter into a contract for longer than 3 years without town meeting approval. When the town installed the EV charging stations, we needed to contract with a company that would manage the payments through network services. The company the town is contracted with was recommended by the EV charging station equipment provider. The contract with this company automatically renews and therefore requires a town meeting vote.
Thank you, Mr. Keogh. Questions, comments from the gym? Seeing none, questions, comments from the auditorium?
No questions.
In that case, our action comes on Mr. Keogh's motion to move the article as printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see one in opposition. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
1 in opposition, so it is a majority vote. The motion carries. We now turn our attention to Article 14, acceptance of easements on West Park Drive. Mr. Welch.
Patrick Welch, 15 Chauncey Circle. I move that the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by purchase, gift, and/or eminent domain easements on West Park Drive Extension and 118 Flanders Road for the purpose of installing and maintaining a traffic light and related appurtenances as approximately shown on a plan of land entitled B-Walt and Temporary Construction Easement Plan, dated January 2021, prepared by Beals and Thomas, on file with the town clerk, as said plan may be amended.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. Brief comments?
And I'll ask the town planner, Jim Robbins, to come up and present.
Okay. Mr. Robbins and then Mr. Silverberg, you want to speak? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jim Robbins, Town Planner. Can I have the first slide? So you see in front of you the extension of West Park Drive and the bike trail, which is outlined here in the dashed line. West Park Drive is going to be extended. Most of you know that West Park Drive currently is a cul-de-sac with commercial properties and industrial properties on the existing road. The roadway will be extended onto Flanders Road. The Planning Board has already approved the subdivision plan, a component of which is the new traffic light at the intersection of Flanders and the new West Park Drive and the bike trail. This article is about the appurtenances that will support the new traffic light. Next slide. So at the intersection that I showed you, the much larger road earlier, there's only 65 square feet that we need an easement from the property owner. Next slide. So the easement provides area for new traffic signal and supporting appurtenances at the intersection of West Park Drive Extension and Flanders Road. There's no cost to the town for the easement. All expenses associated with the traffic signal are funded through a Mass Work grant program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Mr. Silverberg, did you want to make some remarks?
Mr. Moderator, if it's okay with you, I'd like to report the planning board
Yes.
vote on Article 14 and 15. Just
Yes,
to save
please
time.
report both while you're here, yes.
Mark Silverberg, 7 Weld Street. The planning board voted 3-0 to vote in support of Article 14 and Article 15. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silverberg. All right, any questions from the gym? Yes, Ms. Spring? Yes, please. Just speak loudly, it'll be fine.
Okay. Carolyn Spring, 12 Deerslayer Lane. Just a question. So my office is in the office park itself. Will this have any impact on those of us who enter through Research Drive onto West Park Drive?
Good question. That's a great question. So there will be no impact to those that currently exist on West Park Drive.
So when I drive down the hill, because my building is off of that cul-de-sac, no impact to me?
During construction, they'll be affecting the cul-de-sac, and you're on one of the driveways off the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
So you may have some construction interruption, but your access will still be from Research Drive. There's no work on Research Drive, and there's no work on the existing West Park Drive.
And no traffic light on the existing West Park Drive?
There's no changes to West Park Drive and Research. Only after they open the cul-de-sac to Flanders Road, there'll be a new signalized traffic intersection at Flanders Road.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any report from the auditorium? Discussion?
No questions.
In that case, your action comes on Mr. Welch's motion, authorizing the Board of Selectmen to acquire, et cetera, et cetera. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. All right, thank you. All those opposed? I see none opposed in the gym. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
I will declare that a unanimous vote, and just because although it doesn't authorize money, because it mentions the word eminent domain, I'm going to make it clear that's a unanimous vote, which would pass the 2/3 just in case it's ever necessary. We now turn to the next related article, Article 15. I will note that Mr. Silverberg has already read the report from the Planning Board previously, so we don't need to redo that. And again, Mr. Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just a quick comment. Just had one of those wonderful cookies from the Westboro Women's Club out there, and I just learned my first lesson. Good lesson at town meeting is don't have a cookie before you make your first, before you read your first article motion. So I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by purchase, gift, and/or eminent domain, permanent and/or temporary access, trail, utility, construction, and related easements on properties located at 118 Flanders Road and 2300 West Park Drive, 2200 West Park Drive, and 134 Flanders Road, as approximately shown on a plan of land entitled Bewald and Temporary Construction Easement Plan dated January 2021, prepared by Beals and Thomas, on file with the town clerk, as said plan may be amended.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. As I mentioned, Mr. Silverberg has reported out that the Planning Board has recommended favorably, and Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is the second portion of the plan that I showed you in the last article. This time we're talking about the trail itself, and on the plan that you see here, you see the new West Park Drive intersecting with Flanders Road, and you can see the bike path, which is outlined in heavy bold and dash lines. So this bike path is part of what we call the Boston to Worcester Airline Trail. Many people call it BWALT because it's easier to say. And this will be connecting the existing West Park Drive on the road bike path. So if you've been there recently, you know there's a bike lane striped on West Park Drive. This will allow that to extend all the way to Flanders Road. And we are talking about the permanent easement for the bike path and the temporary construction easement, which is the dash line on the perimeter of the bike path. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide. So the easements provide trail, utility, construction, and related easements on properties extending along West Park Drive Extension and Flanders Road, as shown in the warrant. There's no cost to the town for the easements, and all expenses associated with purposes of the easements are funded through the MassWorks grant program. Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Questions, comments from the gymnasium? Seeing none, questions, comments from the auditorium?
No questions, Mr. Moderator.
Lisa, thanks. Well, thanks for taking over for them. Your action, therefore, comes on Mr. Welch's motion again, and was a motion to vote to authorize the selectman to do all that he said. All those in favor, please raise your voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see no opposition in the gymnasium. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
In that case, I declare a unanimous vote. Again, that far exceeds the 2/3 majority, just in case the issue of eminent domain ever comes up. Just a moment here. So we're at Article 15. We're halfway through. I forgot to mention at the beginning, maybe I subliminally done on purpose, I'm not planning on taking a lunch break. But I realized that, because I think we can get through this relatively quickly. However, I realize that you're not captive here. In the days of COVID, to unload and load up this room would easily take an hour and a half. So I'm going to ask people as we approach lunchtime to look ahead in the warrant for when you think you in good conscience can step away if you need to get lunch. You can either buy snacks from the women's club or go get lunch and come back. If you choose to do that, I'm going to ask that you check in with the clerks to see if they want you to drop off your voting slip and then get it back when you come back. But I think it's much more efficient for us to do that than to take a break, though it's your meeting and you make the call. But I'm willing to just keep going so we can maybe get some of our afternoon or evening. So with that said, I just want to let people know it's okay to come and go to the bathroom. It's okay to come and go and get snacks. It's okay to come and go at lunch. I just ask you not to disrupt and to choose the time that seems best in what you think what's coming up in the meeting. With that said, Article 16, Town Seal Review Committee. Ms. Marshall.
Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Brief remarks?
Yes, we have a presentation.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to give everyone an overview of what the article is and what it isn't. Next slide, please. So this article will create a committee that will be appointed by the town moderator. The committee will consist of a minimum of 7 residents and a maximum of 9. It is intended to include persons as they are selected suited to the charge of the committee, which we'll get to in just a moment, by their interest and familiarity with the history of the town seal, experience in design work, and their overall civic participation. Next slide, please. The committee's charge will be to review the history of town seals in Westboro and to consider whether or not the town should adopt a new town seal after a very public process that shall include consultation with a diverse group of stakeholders. The public process will include multiple public forums, and the committee will be charged with that, obviously. And the committee will also be charged with providing a report and recommendation to a future town meeting that recommends whether or not the town should adopt a new town seal. Thank you, Mark. If the recommendation is to adopt a new town seal, the committee is also charged with including in their report and recommendations a proposed process for creating a town seal. I'll bore you with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 47. Each town shall have a seal established at town meeting to be kept by the town clerk. Papers or documents issued from any office or board of the town may be attested therewith. Cities which had an authorized seal in use on May 10th, 1899, may continue to use such seal until changed by ordinance, and other cities shall by ordinance establish a seal of the city and designate the custodian thereof. So just to be clear, a vote in favor of this article is not to change the town seal. It is to create a review committee to consider whether or not there should be a recommendation to consider a new town seal. Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. So as Ms. Marshall has made quite clear, we could speak for days and hours on our individual preferences about what should or shouldn't be on the town seal. So in our discussions, we are here to talk about whether or not we should create a committee to review the town seal. In our remarks, it's fine to make passing reference to things you either do or don't like about the town seal, but I don't want to go on and on about the design. If you think the town seal should be changed, I would encourage you to vote yes to create the committee, and it's okay to mention remarks, but I don't want to get into the history of what's good or bad about it. That will be up to the committee to recommend, and as Ms. Marshall has made clear, the town seal cannot change without action by a future town meeting. So with that said, I'll welcome discussion about Ms. Marshall's motion about establishing a town seal review committee. Anyone want to speak here? Anyone want to speak in the auditorium?
No questions.
No questions. Mr. Walsh. Oh, wait a second, the microphone wasn't on. Steve, can you turn on?
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive.
Yep.
Some people may feel that the town seal is what it represents is important. I think that having something to meet the state laws is important. Whether it changes is not that important to me, and to try to keep town meetings as short as possible, I recommend that we just, not pass this article, and that way it doesn't keep coming up at future town meetings with, approval processes and more discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Marshall.
Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. So for those who may not be familiar with why is this even on the warrant, there have been a number of residents in the community, and I would dare say hundreds is not an exaggeration, certainly more than are here today, who have raised concerns with our town seal, which you can see behind me, for a number of reasons that we don't have to get into. So while I certainly respect the comments made by Mr. Walsh, the selectmen have certainly heard loud and clear, and we've debated and discussed loud, in a couple different meetings, the importance of bringing this forward for a vote, and we intentionally didn't want to just bring it forward with a recommendation. We felt that a thoughtful public process to consider whether or not the town seal should change, it would be the way to go. So as much as I love town meeting, and I don't mind how long it drags on, I think that the process that the Board of Selectmen have recommended is a sound one and is fair for all residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Any comments from the auditorium?
No comments.
No comments. In that case, our action comes on Ms. Marshall's motion to move the article which would establish a Town Seal Review Committee. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. All those opposed? Hang on. I see approximately 12 opposed here. Vote, report from the auditorium?
3 opposed.
3 opposed. We definitely was a majority. The 12 opposed was certainly in the minority, but there were 12. So I'm going to declare that it's a majority vote. The motion carries. And just while we think about that, for those of you who are here, but we'll obviously be open to other people, I'm going to work with the selectmen and the town manager to sort of publicize and make it clear how people can apply to be on the committee. And so I will work with the town manager, selectmen to do that, and we'll get that committee started up and as soon as we can. So with that said, so Article 16 passes. We now move to Article 17, establishing a disability commission. Mr. Keogh. Or somebody else is taking it? Mr. Keogh.
Thank you. Sean Keogh, 5 Yorkshire Circle. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Keogh. Any brief remarks?
Sure. This article seeks to accept Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8J, to create a Commission on Disabilities. The commission is proposed to have 7 members. A majority of the members must consist of people with disabilities. 1 member shall be a member of the immediate family of a person with a disability, and 1 member shall be either an appointed or an elected member of the town. The commission's charge includes, but is not limited to, researching local problems affecting people with disabilities, serving as a resource for compliance with state and federal laws affecting people with disabilities, and reviewing and making recommendations about town policies, procedures, services, activities, and facilities as they affect people with disabilities.
Thank you, Mr. Keogh. Questions? Let's see, we'll have... Okay, Mrs. Anderson.
Janet Anderson, 7 Tronci Street. Just a question. I don't see anything about financial matters on this. Is this a volunteer committee?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Ms. Leslie?
Leslie, 207 West Main Street. I just wanted to speak in favor of the article. In my day job, I work for the Federation for Children with Special Needs, and I counsel families to support their children. I think one of the benefits of this would to not only bring a community that's in compliance with the law on ADA, but make it more inclusive. We encourage communities to support people with disabilities, and I'm encouraged that the majority of the people sitting on this commission will be people with disabilities, because one of the phrases in our community is nothing about us without us. So I am speaking in support of the town establishing or reestablishing a disability commission so that we can be informed and create not only an accessible but an inclusive community. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion from the auditorium?
No comments.
No comments from the auditorium. In that case, our action comes on Mr. Keogh's motion who moved the article as printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none opposed. Report from the auditorium?
None opposed.
None opposed. We'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Moving on to Article 18 regarding a facility rental revolving account. Mr. Johnson.
Ian Johnson, 9 Burtis Adams Way. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. This article will amend Article 15 of the town bylaws to add a town facility rental revolving account under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 3. This will allow up to $25,000 of revenue recognized by the town through facility rental to be used for facility maintenance. Currently, the town collects approximately $2,000 for facility rental, and that money is deposited into the general fund. So this revolving account will now collect that and allow it to be expended for the maintenance of the facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any discussion here in the gymnasium? Discussion in the auditorium?
No discussion.
No discussion. In that case, our action comes on Mr. Johnson's motion to approve the article as printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none opposed. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
No opposition. We'll declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 19, and we're going to preface this. Articles 19, 20, and 21 are 3 different articles regarding the same intent. The intent is to change the terminology of the Board of Selectmen to Select Board. And so although these will be 3 different motions and 3 different articles, I'm going to allow and let people know if they have questions about this. In general, I'll allow some discussion about Articles 19, 20, or 21, all under the discussion under Article 19, just the hopes that we can get all the questions on the table and then move to proceed to votes. But we will take each one individually, but if people want to make comments just about all 3 articles at this time, we'll allow that. With that said, Mr. Edinburgh.
Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. Some remarks?
A few comments. This article and the 2 subsequent articles will change the name of the Westboro Chief Executive Officers, currently the Board of Selectmen, to Select Board. This is a common change in Massachusetts communities to promote inclusivity and equality by adopting gender-neutral terms for local government bodies. The Massachusetts Municipal Association reports that 121 Massachusetts communities now use the term Select Board. In January 2020, the Massachusetts Selectmen's Association also changed their name to the Massachusetts Select Board Association. A vote in favor of this article will make this change in the general bylaws. A vote in favor of Article 20 will make this change in the zoning bylaws, and a vote in favor of Article 21 will make this change in the town charter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. Any discussion here in the gymnasium? Yes, you, sir, and then you can go next, Mr. Silverberg, okay?
Steve Hilton, 2 Folly Lane. I guess this qualifies as a point of order, Mr. Moderator. Yeah. Section 4 of Article 21 says this act shall take effect upon its passage. And the reason I bring this up is that we have subsequent articles that refer to the Board of Selectmen. And I didn't know whether it would take effect so quickly or immediately in this case, so that we would have to potentially amend the language of all these subsequent articles on the town meeting floor?
Yeah. Okay, thank you for pointing out that. There was some discussion with that when I listened and participated with the Finance Committee motion. I want to let you know that Articles 19 and 20 in general just allow for the change in the town documents, the bylaws, and whatever. The part of Article 21 is actually a law that would need to be passed by the state legislature. So the intent of Section 4 is that that's a bill that, if it passes, the selectmen could authorize the state legislature, and they're proposing the state legislature let their part say the charter change would take effect immediately upon the state legislature approving it, but by then this town meeting will be over and the town, if Articles 19 and 20 pass, the town would already be authorized to make its changes. So that effective immediately isn't today. That's proposed wording for the legislature to act, and that usually takes anywhere from like 3 to 12 months or so.
Great, thank you.
So, did I explain that okay? Thank you. Thankfully, we thought about that. Mr. Silverberg.
Mark Silverberg, 7 Weld Street. Since Article 20 is an amendment to the zoning bylaw, the planning board held a scheduled public hearing on May 4th, 2021. The hearing was properly advertised in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette on April 17th, 2021 and April 24th, 2021. The planning board voted 4-1 to support Article 20 as written in the 2021 annual town meeting warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Silverberg. Any more discussion from the gymnasium? Again, we'll deal with Articles 20 and 21 later. I just wanted to let everybody know we can talk about all three of them now. Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. Similar to the earlier question,
Okay.
I assume that our select board or board of selectmen get to retain their positions. They've done a great job, and I just want to make sure that if we were to change all the names, it's not like we need to re-elect or acquire new members to a board.
I'll answer, and the town council will correct me if I'm wrong. This has nothing to do about people's positions. It's just simply changing the terminology of people already holding those positions. So it would have no effect on the election cycle or anything like that. That's correct. The town council nods, yes, that's correct. Okay, good. Close one. I see no more discussion here in the gym. Any discussion from the auditorium?
No discussion.
No discussion. Again, in that case, our action comes on Article 19, motion made by Mr. Edinburgh. This is the specific one amending the general bylaws to change references of the Board of Selectmen to Select Board and other similar things. Will all those in favor please raise their voting slip? All those opposed? I see 2 or 3 in opposition here in the gym. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
No opposition. In that case, it's a majority vote. The motion carries. We now turn our attention to Article 20. This is the zoning bylaw version of changing select board, selectmen. So, Mr. Silverberg, do you like to make a motion? Mr. Silverberg has already reported on the planning board hearing. Sorry, didn't mean to catch you there.
Sorry, guys, I thought that was already done.
No, I know, yeah, sorry, yeah, got a little confused.
I moved the article as printed in the warrant.
Okay. Again, so Mr. Silverberg moves the article as printed in the warrant. He has already provided us with the planning board hearing report. Any discussion on Article 20? Seeing none, any discussion in the auditorium?
None.
Knowing that, our action comes on Mr. Silverberg's motion. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see one in opposition. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
No opposition. That is more than a 2/3 vote with only 1 in opposition. Therefore, the motion carries. It is a 2/3 vote. We now move to Article 21, amending the town charter, similarly to change the term Board of Selectmen to Select Board. Mr. Edinburgh.
Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. Any further comments? Nope. Okay, so this is, as I explained, this is actually authorizing the Board of Selectmen to petition the General Court to use language provided to make the charter change. A little backstory: to change the charter without going through a very long process that requires an election. The other way to change the charter is for the town meeting to authorize the selectmen to petition the legislature, and then the legislature has to approve. So that's what this one does. Any discussion here in the gym? Seeing none, any discussion from the auditorium?
None.
In that case, our action comes on Mr. Edinburgh's motion. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none opposed. Report from the auditorium?
None opposed.
None opposed. In that case, this one is unanimous. The motion carries. Article 22, amending the town charter to include the Facilities Department in the Department of Public Works. Mr. Payant.
Chris Payant, Director of Public Works. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Payant, brief remarks.
As you heard the town manager mention at the very beginning, she's already delegated oversight of the DPW, or oversight for the DPW to, for the DPW to have oversight of the Building and Grounds Department. And this is, as similar articles. This is to formalize that adjustment organizationally for us.
Thank you, Mr. Payne. Any questions? Again, this authorizes the Board of Selectmen to petition the legislature to clarify our charter that the Building and Grounds Department comes under the DPW. Any discussion from the auditorium?
None.
Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Payne's motion, which is to move the article as printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see one opposed here. Report from the auditorium.
No opposition.
No opposition. Therefore, the motion, a majority vote passes. The motion passes with one in opposition. Article 23. I'll also mention Articles 23 and 24 are, Articles 23 and 24 are somewhat related, and so we can have discussion about both. It's just different parts. But we're going to take separate motions and deal with them. But if there's conversation about the two, since they're related, we can talk about both together. Article 23, Mr. Johnson.
Ian Johnson, 9 Burtis Adams Way. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Johnson, brief remarks?
Yes. So this article will change the annual town election from the first Tuesday to the second Tuesday in March. The article also adds language to give the Board of Selectmen flexibility to change the election to a different day or time while requiring that appropriate notice be given. The annual town meeting will continue to be the second Saturday following the election, but changes the time to 9 a.m. unless otherwise determined by the Board of Selectmen. The article also provides flexibility to the board to choose an alternate date for the fall town meeting. And finally, the article removes language about town meeting week, the specificity of when the meeting will recess, and what happens in the event of a holiday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. For consistency, should we say Select Board in those places where it says Board of Selectmen?
Another thing that was talked about early on in the process. Essentially, the reason why it was written this way, and I'll have the town council and selectmen confer, is that because the town meeting previously approved changing it, just in case it failed, these were written using the terminology Board of Selectmen, but once they are passed, the previous authorization will let the actual text in the bylaw make the edit to Select Board. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Town council says yes, that's correct. So again, all right. Any conversation from the deliberation from the auditorium?
No.
Okay. In that case, our action comes on Mr. Johnson's motion, which was to move the articles printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see no opposition. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
In that case, the motion carries unanimously. Article 24, amending the general bylaws relating to the town meeting quorum clarification. Mr. Keogh.
Sean Keogh, 5 Yorkshire Circle. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Keogh. Brief remarks.
Yes, so prior to the 2017 annual town meeting, both the annual town meeting and fall and special town meetings were described in Section 1 as Sections 1A and 1B. Following that meeting, they were separated out into Sections 1 and 2. However, Section 5 was not updated at that time to change from A and B to 1 and 2, and so this housekeeping item is requested today.
Thank you, Mr. Keogh. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion from the gymnasium, any discussion from the auditorium?
No discussion.
No discussion. In that case, our action comes on Mr. Keogh's motion to approve the article as printed in the warrant. Again, all those in favor, please raise your voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none in opposition. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
Okay, I declare that a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Moving on to Article 25, amending the general bylaws related to licensing of solicitors and canvassers. Mr. Welch, is it your turn?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. Brief remarks?
This bylaw sets forth requirements for a notice of residence to refuse solicitors. It also changes the requirements of the size of the card from 3 inches by 4 inches to 3 by 5 inches and reduces the size of the lettering from 1 inch to ½ an inch. This article further updates the bylaw to refer to it as a bylaw rather than as an ordinance, and to update Section 12 section references. Section 12 currently refers to Section 6 as having the notice provisions. Section 6 actually refers to a 7-day waiting period. This article properly changes the references to Section 10, which speaks to the soliciting prohibited.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. Discussion from the auditorium. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'll go with the auditorium. Any discussion in the auditorium? I'll go there first.
Nothing in the auditorium.
Thank you. Any discussion here in the gymnasium? Ms. Spring. Thank you.
Still tall. Carolyn Spring, 12 Deerslayer Lane. Just a question, how come there's no fine in there for violations by people, solicitors violating the bylaw, if we adopt it? That was my question, why there's no fine
Thank you.
provided for.
Can anyone address whether there is a fine in another section or whether, hang on, give us a second to find out while we're doing it. Ms. Williams? Brief discussion.
The full text of the bylaw is not in the article because we're not amending the entire article, but section 16 of Article 24 speaks to the penalty.
So there are fines somewhere?
Yep.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we already asked for discussion from the auditorium. If there is none, I see, Mrs. Anderson. Ms. Anderson.
Janet Anderson, 7 Tronci Street. I'm wondering if this applies to nonprofits as well as for-profit solicitation. I'm picturing my daughter as a little girl going door to door selling Girl Scout cookies and maybe not noticing one of these signs.
Okay, anyone have an answer to that question? Quick review of the current bylaw. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. We're getting an answer. While we get an answer, any other questions from the auditorium yet? No. Hang on, they're doing a quick review. Town Council?
Hi, Sharon Everett, Town Council. It's in the definitions of the section Article 24 of the bylaws. I don't have a precise provision here, but I believe that Girl Scout cookies and Girl Scouts going around is not required to have a license from the licensing authority. So I believe those are exempt.
Thank you. And I'm sure the Selectmen and Town Manager's Office will take under advisement whether that may need further revision, but there's nothing to change that here. Seeing no other questions, our action comes on Mr. Welch's motion. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none in opposition in the gym. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
In that case, it is a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Article 26, amending the general bylaws. Article 38, animal control bylaw. Mr. Edinburgh.
So Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I move the article as printed in the warrant.
At least we didn't have to read it all. Thank you. Mr. Edinburgh. Brief remarks?
Actually, there's a presentation.
By brief remarks, I also meant presentation.
Okay, so Article 6 is to amend the general bylaws animal control. 26, I'm sorry. And just a little bit of background. This has been a topic of great conversation in community and public engagement. We've discussed this at 5 Board of Selectmen meetings. I can say dozens, if not well over 100 email messages on different aspects of the proposed changes at different points in time in the process from the public. And the Board of Selectmen on March 4th, 2021 did hold a public hearing to receive additional input and feedback from the community. And I want to thank everyone who did participate by sending us messages or participating in the public hearing. The feedback we got was informative, thoughtful, insightful, and well and respectfully presented. So a number of changes to the animal control bylaw. In section 2, I won't read them all, they're up on the screen. They're in the booklet you have in front of you, but the article adds additional terms that are defined under the animal control bylaw as they relate to chickens, poultry, and other fowl. The purpose of this change is to regulate the keeping of poultry for personal use on residential lots of 2 acres or less in size. As we heard throughout the process, larger parcels of property are covered under state regulations, so this is covering those smaller property sizes and for personal use. It's intended to further the objectives of and to act in concert with existing federal, state, and local laws concerning the maintenance of property, the keeping of poultry, and the abatement and prevention of nuisances within the town. And so we're trying to make application and the rules around personally kept poultry and chickens consistent with other laws. Nothing in this bylaw is intended to limit or restrict the authority of the Board of Health, the Animal Control Officer, Animal Inspector, or the Health Agent to act in accordance with any other law within their jurisdiction. And that's including but not limited to the authority of the Board of Health to abate nuisances. So some general highlights of the general regulations. No owner and or keeper shall permit any poultry on any public property within the town. Chicken coops must be located at least 5 feet away from abutting property. Poultry, other than chickens, that housing needs to be 10 feet away. And for exotic bird, housing 50 feet away. And the definition of exotic bird, that's in the details you have in the R&R and in the article. Poultry must be kept in a structure that must not create nuisances, including noise disturbances between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Hens may perch in a run provided they are quiet. With respect to standards of care, some of the key highlights is that outdoor structures must be provided for poultry, may be attached to the coop, but may be closed off between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. to keep poultry safely in their coops. No structure or combination of structures can occupy more than 25% of the usable lot size. And there are rules about the interior floor space of 1.5 square feet per floor space per chicken and 1 linear foot of perch space per chicken. So this is really about making sure that chickens have a healthy and safe environment in which to live. Structures must include access to a minimum of 4 square feet of outdoor pen and run space per chicken. So density requirements, I won't read the entire chart here, there's a lot there, but basically, depending on the number of chickens you want and how that fits within the usable space on your lot, this chart lays out the interior floor space minimum requirements, the linear perch you need, the outdoor run and pen space minimum size, and the total minimum structure size that you would need to keep. So for 6 chickens, it's 33 square feet. If it's 24 chickens, it's 132 square feet of total space. Also with the density response, if we look at chicken flock size by lot size, if you're under 1/8 of an acre, it's 6, and it steps up in increments of multiples of 6 from there up to the 1 to 2 acre 50 chickens. My understanding from the animal control officer is the reason is chickens come in 6-packs when you go to Tractor Supply or the other stores where you get them. So density requirements for other adult poultry are provided here as well. Again, it scales up with the lot size for the different types of poultry other than chickens. Enforcement and penalties. If there's a violation of this bylaw, the Board of Selectmen and or Animal Control Officer or our designees may issue a written order. Person who violates the bylaw may be penalized by non-criminal disposition. So it's an administrative fine. It's provided by Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 21D, and the town's non-criminal disposition bylaw. The fines for offenses are listed here on the chart, and I'll just remind folks that there's always an effort to resolve the issue before resorting to penalties and fines, that it's about safety, health, and well-being of the animals, consideration of the neighbors, and education more than it is to be punitive in nature. There are some exemptions. Individual properties or facilities that are under the direct care of the MSPCA or other organization involved in prevention of cruelty to animals, veterinary practices, animal hospitals, facilities used for the purpose of stocking hunting areas, such as raising of quail or pheasant, facilities raising meat poultry, which will be slaughtered prior to 16 weeks of age for chickens, quail, or pheasant, 20 weeks of age for ducks, and up to 30 weeks for heritage, turkeys, and geese. Licensed rehabilitators are exempt, as are falconers, and small pet exotic birds, such as parakeets, canaries, etc., are not covered under this bylaw change. With respect to how quickly we move into the new rules, keepers and owners of poultry and exotic animals should have 12 months from the effective date of this bylaw to comply with the size of structure and the maximum number of birds allowed under its provisions. Structures that exist prior to adoption of this bylaw may be deemed acceptable on written authorization of the animal inspector, provided that they do not occupy more than 25% of the usable lot size. All other portions of this bylaw take effect in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 32. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. Questions and comments? Sir.
Wilfred Zavoy, 41 Chestnut Street. I'm just wondering if there's been any situations or incidents that caused the promulgating of these regulations.
Somebody want to address on behalf of the selectmen? Ms. Marshall?
Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. Yes, we've received through the Board of Selectmen, the Animal Control Officer, complaints regarding noise of a variety of fowl type, as well as smell originating from the feces of said birds.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Mr. Koenigsberg next.
Yes, Andrew Koenigsberg, 3 Smith Street. Question about the fines. It's like increasing fines per incident. So if a person does something on day 1, day 2, the next day, would it go up? How is this judged as far as incident is concerned?
Try to get you an answer to that. Hang on. Ms. Williams.
So the fines would be issued per address. So I don't know if that answers your question. No. Okay.
I think it was a per day thing of like if it happens 2 days, is that day 1 and day 2, or it's I think the question was about what counts as an incident.
Go ahead.
Ms.
So,
McKendrick.
with respect to fining, I try very hard to work with people. Hopefully, I would not have to issue like $50 one day and then continue to go up. Oh, sorry, Melinda McKendrick, Animal Control. Sorry. Hopefully, I would not have to continually issue increasing fines, but I think it's responsible to allow people a few days in between to make adjustments. Hopefully, they'll be able to do it quickly.
Okay. Ms. Marshall, go ahead.
Sorry. So, Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. So you'll see in section G3, the last paragraph there, if you will, or section, each day or portion thereof shall constitute a separate offense. If more than one, each condition violated shall constitute a separate offense.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Yes.
Hi, Samara Spear, 3 Kimball Road.
Okay.
So I was just up here just to answer the first fella's question. In my particular situation, we do have an odor issue. Our abutters have anywhere from 50 to 90 chickens, so that's why we have spoken to the board and to Christy Williams and Melinda as well. So I think with the way it's been written, with Melinda's input and the board, it's really fair to both sides. For those who do own chickens and for those who are struggling with some issues, the way it's written, I think it will help solve issues across the town with chickens, keeping it fair to chicken owners, but also for those that are having issues. So hopefully everybody will support this bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Anderson.
Janet Anderson, 7 Tronci Street. I don't keep chickens, but my neighbors do, and I have thought about it. I think it's a neat idea. So I just had a question about the wording at the top of page 39 and possibly in some other places as well. That would be under section 11. I guess that's in 11 or in Roman numeral 2. Part C, number 2, where it says the noise and the odor should not become a nuisance. I'm just wondering who gets to judge if it's a nuisance and if there would be an appeal process for that.
Thank you. See Mike second.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. I might actually be able to answer that question, and then I've got a separate question. And so nuisance complaints are typically handled by the Board of Health.
Thank you. Ms. Williams or Ms. McGoldrick, did you want to add anything to that? Were you
going to add more to that?
No, Ms. Williams, let's just hear from Ms. Williams and Ms. McGoldrick first, Ms. McKendrick first.
So in section C8, we talk about creating nuisances, and there's hours between 10 and 7. So it's specific in that section related to noise. And so we would use the animal control officer would sort of reasonably address the nuisance with the neighbor.
Thank you. Nathan, I'm just going to ask you, just because we've had 3 people, is there anyone to speak on this in the auditorium?
No questions.
Okay, in that case, Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. I had a couple of changes that I would like people to consider, and that is the chicken coops must be at least 5 feet away from abutting property. I think 5 feet is actually really close to abutting property. And then the other is distance from the road might be considered separate from distance to property line. Having chicken coops 5 feet from the road all along your property could actually be pretty detrimental to the neighborhood. And so I would propose that we have it be 15 feet from abutters and 50 feet from the road. And so I'd like that to propose that as an amendment.
Okay, can you just tell me where that is so I can...
That is 11C7.
Hang on. Can you tell me what page it's on? There we go.
Page 16.
Okay. Okay, so you're saying chicken, okay, so I will read what's here. So in the version that I have, section 11, C7 says chicken coops must be located at least 5 feet away from abutting property lines. And you're going to propose an amendment to make that what?
15 feet from abutting property lines and 50 feet from any existing roadway.
Okay, wait a second.
And of course, that might trickle into 7A in order to have that still be consistent.
Wait a second. So is a roadway, that's additional words you want added? What was that?
Roadway is not specifically mentioned anywhere in this bylaw.
Okay, so you would like section 11C7 to say chicken coops must be located at least 15 feet away from abutting property lines, and how many feet?
50.
50 feet from abutting roadways?
Correct. And then I think section 7A becomes moot because that's actually less than 15.
Section 7 what?
So 7A, which is saying that it has to be 10 feet away, I think should also be 15 feet. Just kind of have them all be the same.
Oh, I see, 7A, okay. All right, thank you. We'll deal with that time comes and all. Okay, thank you. Mr. Silverberg.
So, Mark Silverberg, 7 Weld Street. My question somewhat piggybacks on Mr. Walsh's question in the sense of chicken coops, I assume, are considered structures and which are normally regulated by building code, zoning, and the building commissioner. And I'm concerned with, my initial concern was with the statement, structures existing prior to the adoption of this bylaw may be deemed acceptable upon written authorization of the animal inspector, provided they do not occupy more than 25% of the usable lot size. Well, 25% of the usable lot size is a fairly large structure, and I just want to know how this bylaw interacts with zoning bylaws, and is the animal inspector confirming a building permit before issuing written authorization? And I guess that follows up with Mr. Walsh's amendment. Are these structures conforming to side yard, setback, and other zoning codes?
Ms. McKendrick?
So, Melinda McKendrick, Animal Control. So currently there are no bylaws regarding the keeping of chickens in town. So there are a number of structures that already exist. Some of them on smaller lots. So the original design of this piece of legislation was to try to accommodate people that already have them, that we're not having problems with, while being able to address some of the concerns of larger flocks that probably should be on larger pieces of property. So there isn't anything currently in regarding chicken keeping specifically.
Thank you. Let me just check and see if there's anyone else need to address the question. I'll let Mr. Edinburgh. We'll get the.
To clarify, that section of the bylaw that talks about structure, the structure is inclusive of the coop and any pen or run that's fenced in. So we're not saying the physical building of a coop can be 25% of usable lot size. So, and you have, for every 1.5 square feet of coop space, you need 4 square feet minimum of pen or run. That would be part of the structure.
Okay, hang on. So Mr. Edinburgh is just pointing out that there is a definition for structure in the proposed Section 2 definitions. All right, well, they confer. Ms. Dorigo.
Dr. Daniela Carrigo, 7 Westminster Way. I just think it's really important for everyone to remember the importance of understanding where your food comes from and how you get it. And acting as though slaughtering animals is something that people don't want to see, they should think about that every single time they pick up a piece of meat in the grocery store. I myself am vegetarian, my family is not, but I'm very aware of what's involved with every single piece of meat that walks into our home. And most of it comes from factory farms that are totally disgusting. Backyard chicken coops, on the other hand, treat animals in a much more humanistic manner. I think that saying that they need to be treated differently than the 5 feet abutting is completely ridiculous, especially for those of us that were back and forth on phone calls with the town before building permanent structures. To now be told that it's going to be 15 feet shows someone that has no knowledge or understanding and obviously did not grow up, as I did, farming. And farming is the background of how you eat. If you would like to give up meat and eating and eggs, I'm fine with that. But that is what you're asking for if you're asking people to not have backyard farming structures. I also think that day needs to be changed to week. Changes in animals do not happen overnight. You can pick up and they tell you that they're sexed, which means you're picking up chicks that are guaranteed to be pullets. What happened in our case is one of those turned out to be a rooster. It took me a week to find a safe home for that rooster. I was very happy with my neighbors not showing up with pitchforks and torches. We tried really, really hard the moment we knew that it was a rooster to find a safe home, but it did take a week. So saying that this is a day, I think is just for the fines and each, the way it's written now, it is not practical for animal owners. I also think that the way this is written is rather limiting for people that do not own large pieces of land. And that is not a progressive way to handle things because it's saying if you're rich enough, because in Westboro, you have to be rather rich to own half an acre or more of land at this time, or if you're buying now, because the lot size has become so much larger, then you can have the animals. But if not, the limitations are more strict. So I just think that people need to consider these issues, where your food comes from, what that means. When you say that you don't want to see the slaughtering, that really says something about how you eat and how you see eating, that you'd rather have it sterilized in styrofoam.
Thank you. Could you just tell me where the reference to day that you wanted changed to week was?
At the bottom, where it says fines.
I'm looking for that part. Which section? G3, fines. Yeah, okay, and then it says, oh, each day or portion thereof. Okay, and would you like to make that as an amendment to change day to week?
To change it to week.
Okay, thank you. Okay, hang on.
And also the top of the same page on slaughtering,
Yeah,
to just remove number 1.
so you are proposing to remove number 1.
Yes.
Okay, hang on, I just got to get a piece of paper to keep track of all this, so just give me a moment to keep track of where all these changes are, or the proposed changes. All right, thank you. Mr. Silverberg.
Mark Silverberg, 7 Weld Street. I guess I really don't feel like my question was answered, Mr. Moderator.
Okay.
I'm still confused about how these structures, which to me need to comply with building codes, and, you know, again, I want to make sure these structures are built in a workmanlike manner, and I'm not sure that the animal inspector is qualified to judge that, and I also want to know that these structures are going to conform to building code, given that some of them are to zoning bylaws, given that some of them might be large.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Williams.
So the general bylaw, or this bylaw that would be in the general bylaws, doesn't circumvent zoning bylaws or building code. So any structures that were created for the purpose of housing any poultry would still need to comply with relevant building code and zoning bylaws.
Thank you. Let me just check. Any conversation from the auditorium yet?
None so far.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Name, address, and question, please.
My name's Christine Bradley at 2 Kimball Road. I live in a neighborhood where we have 2 homes that own chickens and other birds. One of the homes has a fairly small amount of chickens, and they're you can hear them for sure, but it's not horrible. The other home is 2 properties down with 90 plus chickens and ducks and geese, and I can hear them quite well. It's a lot of noise and smell. I think that this article really tries to compromise, because I understand that there's folks that want chickens, and I totally think that's fantastic, and if they want that, that's it's great. But I think we just need to find like a happy medium, like compromise, to be able to put, right now there's no limitations, there's no restrictions, and this is a great way to kind of find like a middle ground to accommodate the chicken owners as well as the neighbors. The way I look at it is, if you had somebody with a whole bunch of dogs move in next door, that wouldn't be allowed, the noise and the smell. And so I don't understand why having 90 chickens is okay if you wouldn't be allowed 90 dogs. So, I think this is a great compromise.
Thank you. Any more remarks before we go with Mr. Dredd? More remarks from, do you guys want to make a remark? Yes, go ahead. We'll get to you next, Mr. Dredd.
Yes, hi, Fred Leonardo, Building Commissioner, Zoning Enforcement in town. Just for clarification, the general zoning bylaw allows any accessory structure to a primary residence to be within 5 feet of the rear and side setbacks. It'd still have to be 50 feet from the front. And any structure 200 square feet or less is not subject to a building code, a building permit or the building code per se. So only structures greater than 200 square feet would have to come to the building department for a building permit. just for clarification.
Thank you. Just a clarifying question so I can get back to Mr. Walsh. So are you saying that if it was a 200 square foot, well, regardless of size, if Mr. Walsh's amendment were made from 5 to 15 feet, the zoning bylaw would still allow? And do you know if this said 15 feet, would the zoning bylaw be repealed, or would it? Well, I guess that would be. It makes it bigger. So yeah, I'm just trying
so for clarification, any accessory structure, whether it be commercial or residential, is allowed to be within 5 feet. Well, I shouldn't say commercial. Let's leave it at residential. My apologies. Any accessory structure is allowed to be within 5 feet, the rear and side. That's generally for an accessory structure, and they talk about like sheds, greenhouses, etc. We haven't necessarily classified a chicken coop or a bird coop, if you will, under the bylaw. I would consider it an accessory structure if you're going to prohibit those from being so close, which is what the bylaw or what this amendment talks about. Then we'd look specifically at structures that house birds and make that determination if that's all that was used for. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just want to make sure.
Yeah, we wouldn't change the general bylaw, otherwise people couldn't have sheds and whatnot. And then you'd have to go back into a zoning change. It's a completely different conversation. If that clarifies, hopefully.
Yes, thank you. Okay, Mr. Durrett.
Steve Durrett, 23 Mill Road. I'd like to move the question.
Okay, Mr. Durrett has moved the question, the purpose of which is to terminate debate. We have been discussing this for just about a half an hour. For those of you new or need a crash course, a motion to terminate debate isn't debatable. It's also not amendable. We essentially go straight. The question is, let me just check. To terminate debate, let's see, 2/3 of vote. I think it's 2/3 vote to terminate debate. And what that does is it means we'll go straight to acting on the amendments and the main motion. So if people feel that they've heard enough conversation and are comfortable going straight to acting on the proposed amendments in the main motion, then that would mean you would vote yes on Mr. Durrett's motion to terminate debate. And if you want to keep talking about the amendments and or the article, the motion in general, you would vote no. So with that said, all those in favor of terminating debate, please raise their voting slip.
Point of order?
Yes, what's the point of order?
Is there a second on the motion?
We do not require seconds at our town meeting. Yep. Okay, all those in favor of terminating debate? Just trying to get a good view here. Okay, all those opposed to terminating debate? I see about 7 or 8 opposed, and the rest of us here, and I think there's probably about 50, at least 50 or 60. So there's more than a 2/3 vote here. What type of vote do we have in the auditorium?
No opposition in the
No
auditorium.
opposition. In that case, debate is terminated. We now move to the proposed amendments. We're going to do them one at a time. Okay, the first amendment we have, hang on, I got a piece of paper here somewhere. The first amendment we have was Mr. Walsh's amendment. So the way this does is we work on the amendments one at a time, whether they change the main motion or not, and then once all the amendments have either been accepted or defeated, we then vote on the either as it is or changed motion at the end. So these here, at this point, you're only voting on the changes. So the first amendment proposed by Mr. Walsh, in my Finance Committee booklet, I have it on page 39, about the middle of the page. Mr. Walsh is proposing that section 11C7 be changed such that the first sentence says chicken coops must be located at least 15 feet away from abutting property lines, and then adds and 50 feet from abutting roadways. And then it changes 7A, the line right below it, to say that poultry excluding chickens housing shall be located at least 15 feet away from abutting property lines for consistency. Does that accurately reflect your motion, Mr. Walsh? Okay, we have terminated debate, so now we go to a vote on this. A vote in favor of the amendment is a vote to change to the language from Mr. Walsh that I just read. A vote no to the amendment is to leave it as it's printed in your booklet and as it was printed in the warrant. With that said, all those in favor of the amendment, please raise your voting slips. I see approximately 10. It's a minority, but there's about 10 in favor. What's now those opposed to the amendment? Certainly way more than 10, probably like 40 or 50. So here the amendment is defeated. What's the report from the auditorium?
We had 0 votes in favor.
Okay, and the rest?
The rest,
Okay,
yes,
all right. So therefore, the amendment is defeated. It did not attain 2/3 vote. We now move to Ms. DeRigo's proposed amendment. We're going to do them in 2 parts because they're not related. Let's see. So I'm going to call your attention to my Advisory Finance Committee. So defeated. Hang on. Ms. DeRigo's first amendment was, I'm going to do it in the order she presented. So on page 42, in section G3, the last section of G3 currently starts with each day or portion thereof shall constitute a separate offense. And I believe her intent was because a day is a portion of a week. I think she wanted to change to just say each week shall constitute a separate offense. Is that what you want? Okay. So the amendment would be to change the sentence that starts with each day or portion thereof shall constitute a separate offense to say each week shall constitute a separate offense. All right, all those in favor of this amendment, again, this voting in favor is to make this change in the main motion. All those in favor, please raise their slips. Okay, it looks like we have, I think that is a 2/3 vote. Let's see those opposed. I see about 12 opposed and more than that in favor. So I believe we have a 2/3 vote in favor of the amendment here. What's the report from the auditorium?
2 in opposition.
Are there any in favor?
Yes.
But
Okay,
would-
I'm sorry, may I ask for just a show of
Yeah.
in
Just
favor
try to. I
again?
just want to get a
Okay,
count to
sure.
make it clear if it's 2/3 or not.
It is 5-2 in the auditorium in favor of the amendment.
5-2. Okay, and since I believe, to me, it was clearly a 2/3 vote here, and so it's close enough to 2/3. So I'm going to declare that this amendment carries with a 2/3 vote, and that the main motion shall now read in G. Hang on, I'm just going to make a note here. So the main motion is now amended to say G3 will start with each week shall constitute a separate offense. And then finally, we had Ms. DeRigo's motion, which was on the top of my Finance Committee report and recommendations, page 42, for slaughtering. She is recommending deleting number 1, and I'm assuming by inference, if that deleting number 1 and renumbering 2, 3, 4 is 1, 2, 3. All right. So let's vote on that. All those in favor of Ms. DeRigo's amendment to yeah, go ahead. What's the question?
I would suggest that amendment make the whole bylaw more permissive and possibly not allowable.
Well, we've already terminated debate, so it'll be up to others to adjudicate. My job is to just sort of run here, and I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know whether it makes it impermissible or not, so others can determine, unless town council has something to tell me otherwise.
I don't know if the amendment is allowable.
The amendment? Can't hear. Yeah, sorry, hang on. Oh, I see, so you're questioning the scope. Okay, I got it, okay. Awesome. Mr. Silverberg and I will now have a discussion in the microphone. So,
Mark
okay, I see what you're
Silverberg,
saying.
7 Weld Street. I'm questioning the scope of the amendment
okay,
exactly. I think it makes the bylaw more permissive, and someone who might otherwise have come to the meeting to speak against that would not have had the opportunity to do so.
All right, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I hadn't thought of that aspect. Let me just think about this for a moment. I'm sorry, hang on. So let me just explain something. So right now, the purpose of the selectmen having a warrant, which is the same derivative as the word warning, is that people through the warrant are warned about what action the town meeting may take. There are rules about saying that things that, if you, for instance, here the town has been warned that slaughtering of poultry shall be conducted outside of the view of abutters, neighbors, or other poultry. And Mr. Silverberg is saying that people may have not come to talk about this because they may have thought that was in the, that was in this and may not have come to talk about it. My belief is that right now, are there any regulations that would disallow slaughtering? Yeah. I do not believe there are, so I'm going to, we'll take the vote. We can figure it out later and adjudicate it if we have to. But given that right now there are no bylaws that say slaughtering can't be conducted outside the view of abutters, then I think removing it is okay because it leaves the status quo. And so I'm going to allow a vote to happen. It doesn't mean the vote's going to pass, but it allows the vote to happen, and then it can be adjudicated if others disagree, but just so we can move on. So I'm going to now allow the vote on Ms. DeRigo's motion to remove F1 and renumber F2, 3, and 4 as F1. So if you're voting in favor of this, you're in favor of removing 1 and renumbering. If you want to leave it the way it's written in the warrant, you will vote no on the amendment. So those in favor of Mr. DeRigo's amendment, please show their voting slips. I see about 7 or 8 in favor. All those opposed? Everyone else is opposed. A few may not be voting. Report from the auditorium. 3 in favor, 4 opposed. 3 in favor, 4 opposed. That still does not meet the, that does not defeat the article. The amendment is defeated, not having 2/3 vote. So our attention now turns to the modified main motion, the main motion read by Mr. Edinburgh. We now have the article as printed in the warrant with the single change, hang on, the single change being on page 42, where in the printed version it says each day or portion thereof shall constitute a separate offense. It now says each week shall constitute a separate offense. We had already terminated debate, so we now move to a vote on that amended main motion. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see 3 or 4 in opposition. Report from the auditorium.
1 in opposition.
Okay, amended. So therefore, the amended motion carries. The bylaw is adopted as amended. Thank you. I know that was a tricky one, but thank you for bearing with me. And thank you, Mr. Silverberg, for raising the question. It was one I had not considered in detail. We now move to Article 27, golf safety netting. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Ian Johnson, 9 Burtis Adams Way. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from Country Club retained earnings the sum of $25,000 for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Johnson.
We have our Recreation Director, Jen Kirkland, speak on this one. And this netting has nothing to do with poultry.
Ms. Kirkland.
Hi, Jen Kirkland, Recreation Director. So we're here to ask, this article asks for us to be able to transfer $25,000 from the golf club's retained earnings to fix this netting that you see up on the screen. This is it's a bad safety hazard. It's something that's been discussed over the years, but it's, as you can see, it's just deteriorating. This comes off when you tee off from the 7th hole. A lot of the superintendents, the people that maintain the course, their staff are down there. There's also a house that sits very closely to the cart barn. So we do want to have this netting up and, not looking like this as a matter of safety.
Thank you. Say motion to transfer and appropriate from Country Club retained earnings. Any questions here in the gym? Seeing none, questions from the auditorium?
No questions.
No questions. Our action, therefore, comes on Mr. Johnson's motion to transfer and appropriate from Country Club retained earnings $25,000 for the purpose of the article. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I think I saw a couple in opposition, so a vast majority. Report from the auditorium?
One in opposition.
Okay, so we have total about 5 in opposition and required a majority vote, so therefore the motion carries. Article 28, tree maintenance. Mr. Payant.
Chris Payant, Director of Public Works. I move that the town vote to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $21,000 for the purpose of the article as printed in the warrant. I'll just refer you to the article information in the warrant. This work is really beyond the capability of, in terms of volume of work for our department. It's primarily focused downtown around the Rotary, and we want to limit disruption to the Rotary, and this work has to be done during the day. And so bringing in a contractor will help us speed that up. And then the need for a professional arborist, since these trees are, many of them are ornamental.
Thank you, Mr. Payant. Any discussion here from the gym? Discussion from the auditorium?
No discussion.
No discussion. In that case, our action comes on Mr. Payant's motion to transfer and appropriate from free cash the sum of $21,000 for the purpose in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise their voting slip. Thank you. All those opposed? I see 1 or 2 in opposition here. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
About 2 in opposition, but it is a majority vote. The motion carries. We now move to Article 29, amending the general bylaws, Article 14, Committee for Soldiers' Memorials. Ms. Marshall.
Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. Mr. Moderator, I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Remarks?
Yes. So this article seeks to update the current bylaw to make it consistent with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 105. Specifically, the law says in part, quote, "In towns, the said board shall consist of the chairman of the Board of Selectmen and 5 members elected by the town in the same manner as other town officers, 3 of whom shall be veterans and 2 of whom shall not be veterans of any war." This article therefore changes the membership section of our current bylaw to clarify that the chair of the Board of Selectmen and not any member of the Board of Selectmen must be a member of the committee. Further, this article clarifies that members must be elected and that any vacancy occurring in the town board shall be filled for the unexpired term by the remaining members and cannot be filled by an appointment by the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Any discussion from the gym? Seeing none, any discussion from the auditorium?
None.
In that case, our action comes on Ms. Marshall's motion to approve the article as printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please raise their voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed? I see none in opposition. Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
No opposition. In that case, I declare a unanimous vote. The motion carries. Mr. Edinburgh.
Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I move that we dissolve the 2021 annual town meeting.
Mr. Edinburgh has moved, having completed the warrant, Mr. Edinburgh has moved that we dissolve this town meeting. All those in favor? Thank you. All those opposed? Report from the auditorium?
No opposition.
Report unanimous at 12:51 p.m. Thank you very much for coming. I know it's a tough haul with COVID and being a beautiful May day. I appreciate you doing the town's business, and I appreciate your focus and your attention to the details. Hope to see you next time, maybe in more normal circumstances. Thank you very much. Have a great day. I hereby declare the meeting dissolved.